For those that were here yesterday, thank you for returning, and for our new guests, thank you for being here. It's gonna be a short day, 2 committees today, transportation and tourism. And then we'll have a light lunch for you to either enjoy with us or take on the road. Few housekeeping items, use a microphone. We have about 6 people. 6 people online, so introduce yourself when you're asking a question, because this camera doesn't pick us all up, so that way we know who's asking. And with that, I think we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna kick it off with federal office updates, and I think this morning we'll start with Riley Scott from Congressman Hurd's office. All right, good morning, everyone. Great to be back for day 2, and good to see everyone again. Big shout out to Michael Barkley last night for saving me with my rental car with food. So very grateful for all the great people here at Club 20. So I want to just review a little bit about what I said yesterday in terms of the One Big Beautiful Bill. Congressman Hurd was voted in favor of that bill. But throughout the long process of getting that across the finish line, he advocated for some main priorities for his district, including Medicaid, clean energy tax credits, and against the sale of public lands. He sent letters and then also advocated behind the scenes with leadership to try and make sure that those cuts weren't as stringent and that our most vulnerable populations on Medicaid were protected. Our communities that rely on public lands, our tourism industry that relies on public land was continued to be supported without mass land sales from the federal level, kind of a top-down approach. He put out a statement with Congressman Neguse when Senator Lee's proposal for selling on public land between 0.5 and 0.75% of Forest Service and BLM land was taken out by the Senate parliamentarian. Showing the two of their support for that call and making sure that, showing that the Western Slope does not support this kind of top-down approach of selling off public lands, and that a community-driven, bottom-up, conveyance of a public land is something that's appropriate when it's necessary for public safety or emergency management or something, but just an arbitrary number on certain amounts of public land that needs to be disposed was not something that Western Slope constituents were asking for. And the congressman was pleased with all of the feedback that we got in regards to that proposal, and knew that his constituents out here in Western and Southern Colorado would have his back and his fighting on behalf of that issue. He also was very pleased with some of the changes that the Senate made on the extended phase out of clean energy tax credits. Which he understands as a former energy lawyer, a lot of co-ops and utilities made investments based on a tax framework that he didn't want to change too quickly, so that would really impact the bottom line of those companies and therefore the ratepayers that help cover all of those costs, and wants to make sure that we have clean and reliable and affordable energy, supports in all of the above strategy. And we also sent a letter specifically on extending some of those clean energy tax credits to nuclear energy, as we saw in Colorado this year. Thanks in part to some of the Club 20 advocacy, nuclear energy is now considered clean energy in Colorado. So he also wanted to be supportive of that with a letter extending some of those tax credits to nuclear. Those tax credits did end up extending to nuclear, as well as some other innovative forms of energy such as hydropower, hydrogen, battery storage, carbon capture, and probably another one that I'm forgetting, but, we were pleased to see that. In the end, you know, the congressman was really wanted to make sure that we were supporting working families. The average family of four in Colorado's third congressional district makes $72,000 a year. And if we did not extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that would have raised their taxes at $1,400 per year. And we wanted to make sure that that wasn't happening, for our working families across CD3. We also were pleased with some of the money going to secure our border and hire new agents, train new agents, expand facilities, and modernize those facilities so that we can have a good immigration system. That's one thing that I do want to talk about, considering that we have transportation today, is something that was proposed within the One Big Beautiful Bill. It did not end up making it into the final bill, but I think this is an interesting topic, and I don't know if Club 20 has a position on any of this or not, but it's in regards to the funding of Highway Trust Fund and the solvency issues that the Highway Trust Fund has had for decades. The last time that the gas tax was raised was before I was born, in 1993. So that's currently the gas tax sits at 18.4 cents per gallon for gas and 24.4 cents for diesel. And that's kind of the user-based revenue that goes into the Highway Trust Fund that then is distributed across the country to maintain our highways. Since that funding is not sufficient for the increased cost of taking care of our highways, whether that's the increased labor cost or cost of doing business nowadays, or just the fact that our roads have gone so far in disrepair, they have been able to bail out that Highway Trust Fund by the general fund multiple times. I have a stat that it apparently has been bailed out by the general fund to the tune of $275 billion. So with this solvency issue, there's a deficit of $26.7 billion in FY24. There was $71 billion in outlays in FY24, with the flat revenue of $47 billion coming in from those user fees. So the House Transportation Committee within the reconciliation process proposed a new user-based revenue. That was the first one proposed in over 30 years, and that would be an annual federal registration fee for electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and there was also one for all other vehicles, so gas vehicles. The proposal was $250 a year for electric vehicles, $100 per year for hybrid vehicles, and then $20 for gas vehicles. In committee markup, they did end up stripping the $20 gas vehicle fee, and just proposed the $250 for electric vehicles and $100 for hybrids. And that proposed change would have brought in an extra $38 billion into the Highway Trust Fund in over 10 years. This was supported by the American Trucking Association as well as the Chamber of Commerce. But I do want to give the argument on the other side, that some consumer advocate groups estimate that gas cars are only contributing between $75 and $100 per year through the Highway Trust Fund through the gas tax. So this seems like an undue burden on those electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles. It was more than what your average gas car is contributing. But as we know, in the Western Slope, we use a lot more gas than, you know, someone who lives in a city. So that's the average across the country. But that would, so maybe someone who lives in the Western Slope is contributing $250 for the gas tax. But that was thought through in the markup. It was a party line vote to support this new fee through the electric vehicles and hybrids. Republicans were in support and Democrats were against it. But this, you know, I think is going to come back. Okay, so it made it into the House bill, but it did not, it was stripped out of the Senate bill. So it is not the law, but it was something that passed within the House bill. There's been other talk about other ways to raise revenue within the Highway Trust Fund, including a program called Vehicle Miles Traveled, and I'm sure some of you have heard about, but there's definitely some privacy concerns with that, as that is essentially tracking your odometer, and then assigning a certain value or revenue based on those miles that your vehicle has traveled as a way to fund the highway trust fund more equitably. So this was just another proposal in a different way to see if we can better solve the issue of funding our highway trust fund so that we can work on our roads. I have heard a lot, vehicle miles traveled was definitely something that people were talking about a lot over the last 5 years that I know, because that's how many years I've been working in this, but I'm sure longer. But this kind of federal registration fee, annual fee, was a new proposal that I think is, I haven't heard too much about it, until this time around. So I imagine it'll come back. I'm sure there'll be more conversations about it. But wanted to put that on your guys' radar as we're talking about transportation today. And that was one aspect of the Big Beautiful Bill that was not really talked about in the media too much. And I think a very interesting topic to debate and figure out how we can help solve the issue of our transportation dollars not being sufficient for the roads that we need to be taken care of. So that's what I've got this morning, and excited for the next two committees. Thank you.
Do you want to take any questions?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Do we have any questions for Riley? And folks online, if you have something, please raise your hand. Okay, I guess you're all right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ryan. Back to Grand Junction.
No, I have someone coming to get me.
Oh, good. Okay, let's ask Wyatt Bear from Senator Bennett's office to give us some updates.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wyatt Bear, the Southwest Regional Representative for Senator Michael Bennett. Wish Matthew was here.
Yeah, sorry about that, Wyatt.
Got a couple of quick updates for you on transportation and outdoor recreation stuff. First off, I want to start off with surface transportation reauthorization. Current authorization that was included in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, is set to expire September 30, 2026. Our office has been reaching out over the past in May for feedback on federal highway programs, policies, funding that's administered by the Federal Highway Administration, Department of Transportation, other programs related to service transportation. And we'll be staying in touch in the coming weeks and months on the potential surface transportation reauthorization package, and hoping we can make those things happen. I know CDS has been ongoing conversation. We still don't have any updates from the Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development. I don't know if anyone saw the news last night, but there was a little kerfuffle with the CJS Sub-Appropriations Committee, where they got into a tussle on FBI headquarters. So there's going to be a little delay in the text that comes out of the bills in which CDS projects are included going forward. But if you have any questions about those related to the Western Sub, please ask them. Moving on to tourism and outdoor recreation, I want to touch on the EDA investments that were passed late last year in December. So Senator Michael Bennett cheered on Senate passage of legislation last December to reauthorize the Economic Development Administration, which included provisions from the bill he introduced in 2023, the Rural Outdoor Investment Act. Is going to be a key driver of rural economies and prioritizing future federal funding opportunities, replacing Western Slope. The EDA's public works grant programs help communities invest in local infrastructure to attract industry, in addition to encouraging business expansion, diversifying local economies, generating local investment, and creating and retaining jobs. This reauthorization specifically bolsters funding for the Public Works program to restore its $270 million annually, and for the first time gives outdoor recreation special importance when awarding these grants. For PILT, I know PILT CRS has also been an ongoing conversation. In May, Senator Bennett led a bipartisan letter to reauthorize PILT funding for FY26. And Senator Bennett continues to work with rural communities and congressional colleagues to try to find a long-term, more predictable solution to fully fund built in SRS going forward. We know how difficult the insecurity of the funding and whether something is reauthorized is for along the western slope. For more SRS info, hasn't been reauthorized since FY23, gone back to that old law like the early 20th century based on how much funding goes through. The Senate was passed by unanimous consent reauthorization in 2023, early this year. It has not been reauthorized by the House. Senator Bennett continues to be a champion, like I said, for SRS funding. He knows how critical it is for rural communities. We'll continue to work with our colleagues to reauthorize this funding. Specifically, Representative Jody Goose has been leading the effort House to reauthorize SRS from Colorado congressional delegation, which would extend the funding to 2026. Those are the points that I wanted to touch on, but please let me know if you have any questions. I can answer them.
I think we're good.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, next, she's here. Let's welcome Lisa Poole from Senator Hickenlooper's office. I'm here.
Quick.
Good morning. I had a fun time at the rodeo last night. So thanks for that tip, John. Okay, so today's topic is transportation, tourism, natural rec. For transportation, regarding the Department of Transportation grants that have been awarded, many of them were undergoing a really long funding freeze, unfortunately, which was concerning for municipalities and counties all around the state. So we are seeing some grants now being funded, which is a relief, such as airport improvement grants. So if you have an outstanding grant with the DOT, but you haven't heard any updates yet, we're probably will be hearing quite soon, hopefully, but if that doesn't happen, please reach out to one of our congressional offices. And then unfortunately, we did hear recently directly from the agency, the Department of Transportation, that any grants that include electrification or biking or pedestrian infrastructure, that those will not be funded. They are really just focusing on roads and bridges. So that's something to think about, and maybe some entities will have to go back to kind of tweak their grants, like if they were doing a highway improvement project of some sort, but it included a pedestrian underpass or a new bike lane or something, you'll have to possibly tweak that. So just wanted to give you the heads up there. As Wyatt was talking about, Congress must decide to reauthorize or extend the transportation programs that were enacted under the bipartisan infrastructure law. And, in the last 3 years, that bipartisan infrastructure law has delivered over $7.2 billion in investments to projects all across the state. We've got a list on our website. It's really impressive, but it is time we're getting close to the time when the Senate needs to decide on that reauthorization and the scope of it. So I think now would be a great time to be raising your voices, like what kinds of projects we should really be focusing on. Is it aviation? Is it bridges, roads, sports dams? I mean, like everything, rail, like everything really is on the list there. So all of our offices will be gathering feedback on that. And that reauthorization needs to be by the end of next year. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act did include roughly $2.5 billion for air traffic control modernization efforts. And that included replacing some really outdated telecommunication systems and radars. So, again, that's like a smidgen of what that bill does.
12.5 million, but it will have some really great impact here on the western slope, we hope. But as we heard yesterday, the overall impact of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, we heard from most of the speakers that there will be some big unknowns and some huge impacts on things like healthcare and education. So we were continuing to feel very alarmed about that. The senator has said he's concerned that while on the one hand, working families are going to get these tax cuts, but then we will all end up paying more for healthcare. So is there, there very well could be a net loss. Okay, moving on to the tourism rec section. Just want to note that last December, the Explore Act passed, and this bill was one of the bigger bills that it expanded access to outdoor recreation, improved recreation opportunities on public lands across the country. Senator Hickenlooper, as well as Senator Bennett, was a big part of those negotiations, really essential in working with stakeholders to get floor passage of that bill. Now that bill has passed, we're dealing, unfortunately, right now with these mass terminations across federal agencies, and we are dealing it with the BLM and U.S. Forest Service, the National Park Service. So while we want to, increase and embrace our tourism and outdoor rec opportunities in Colorado, unfortunately, it's being thwarted by a lack of staff. I'm hearing from national parks that they're like a third down, or if they lost another custodian, then they would have to close nearly every campground. I mean, these are some really tough decisions that our agencies are having to make right now on the ground all across the western slope and across the state. So Senator Hickenlooper is doing whatever he can to raise this issue of we really need to make sure that the agencies are well staffed. If we have an outdoor recreation economy in Colorado and our way of life depends on it, from a person that's a federal worker who's processing permits for grazing to the person who is making sure that the bathrooms aren't overflowing, or keeping campgrounds open, doing trail work needed, and then doing the fire mitigation needed, so that we actually have great fire breaks and protect communities. These are all such important aspects of the Colorado way of life and keeping it going. So we need to make sure that our agencies are staffed to be able to do that for our tourism to keep going around. And then just a note on public lands while I'm on it, Senator Hickenlooper was very, very outspoken. Great to see that Congressman Hurd and of course Senator Bennett were very outspoken for making sure that we're doing whatever we could to keep the public land sales provision out of that big budget reconciliation bill. So we're glad to see that disappear. Okay, that's it from me. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Rachel Richards, Aiken County and Aspen. And this is probably a comment for all the reps as well. What's happening with the Forest Service is just unconscionable. And Maroon Belt is in our region. It's the most photographed peak in North America for the heating with the flat irons out of Boulder, but it's just, we have visitation there that we've provided bus service for, so it's not overwhelmed. And these cutbacks are such that they've had to pull people off of doing depot work for future fire breaks, for future controlled burns, to work the gate at a tourist location. We as a city are paying for extra volunteers, not volunteers, but extra workers to come in for the second half of the year. The Roaring Fork Transit Agency is paying for their staff to work it the other half of the year. The Forest Service has said, hey, we're managing the best we can, but we will no longer have in-person things. If you want to go get your Christmas tree cutting permit, if you want to find out about campsites, you have to go online and figure that system out. They're not maintaining or pumping the waste facility. The Burn Bells had a nice public restroom that ran with hydropower, but they've had to close it because there's no one on staff who can keep the hydropower system running. And so now these buses dropping 60 people off at a time, or 55, they are putting them next to one pit toilet that is not getting emptied on a regular basis. White River National Forest brings in more revenue than any other forest district in the entire country. And it represents what we all need and love as tourism community. And to have lost the people at the top, people at the bottom, we are having one half the number of people out there putting out campfires that people leave in the wild by mistake. One half the people remove foreign fallen trees, they keep the trails safe. And local communities can't backfill this and other things time after time after time. And we will not have the resources. And it's just really damaging our local economy, and it's damaging our impacts. And further, we're seeing a huge drop across all the Western states in international tourism, with countries that have been insulted by our administration, whether it's Canadian, whether it's people who speak Spanish, whatever. But this is a true economic impact that can't continue this way. So I just want to say, I'm sure that every single community is starting to feel some of these impacts. To have gone from an understaffed agency and cut it in half yet again is just unconscionable, and it's not safe for the residents and the public. We talk about wildfire mitigation, wildfire control, and you can't just say, well, we've patched a few people back in. That's not what we need. We need permanent structure that cares for our public lands, our greatest national amenity that we have for. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And yeah, that's great that your community is able to kind of fill the gap, and there are many communities around our state that cannot do that, which is again concerning because that staff who are really should be doing wildfire mitigation work, maybe they don't have a red card, but they are an important piece of that puzzle to keep our communities safe and the forest healthy. They are able to do other things. So, because the people keep coming,
yeah,
maybe not from other countries right now, but people keep coming. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you again to our legislative staff for joining us this week. It means the world to us to have those updates. I am now going to turn this over to our transportation chair, Mike Goolsby, and we do have Mike Whitlaw online.
Sure he's online.
Well, if he's all there, I don't know. It's a presence.
Just make sure he doesn't have.
Okay.
Good morning, all. In accordance with our bylaws, we ask that only current Club 20 members participate and vote on matters of policy development. If you are interested in becoming a Club 20 member, please see a member of our staff for more information. Discussion is open to members and guests and is a critical part of our committee meetings. When asking a question or making a comment, please use a microphone and speak loudly so everyone can hear you. For those seated in front of a tabletop microphone, please do not turn your microphone on until the committee chair has acknowledged you, and then turn off your microphone once you are finished speaking. For those of you in the back of the room, Club 20 staff will be walking around with the microphone. We will now ask the folks who are joining us first so we can introduce themselves.
I'll go ahead and do that for you, Mike.
Andrea can do that.
Okay. Oh,
Okay, so we have Mike McFall from HDR and also the Club 20 Transportation Chair, Co-Chair. We have Carrie Kellerby. We have Brittany Dixon, Club 20 Executive Director, Cindy Dozier, Amy Tooker, and Jeff Comstock.
Thank you to those of you joining us virtually. If you have questions during the meeting, please raise your hand and Andrea will get to you, or let us know if anyone has raised their hand. Next, we will ask everyone in the room to introduce themselves. So Tom, would you like to start?
Sure. Tom Kleinschmitz, Moffett County Tourism, co-chair of Club 20's Tourism and Outdoor Recreation.
Joe Coulihan, Archuleta County Representative, Tourism and Outdoor Rec Co-Chair, Business Affairs, Second Committee.
Michael Murphy, Hinsdale County Club 20 Chair. Jeff Waller, Hinsdale County Board of Directors.
Terry Banger, former Chair of the Transportation Committee and member of Club 20.
James Rambert.
Diane Schwenke, and I am on the executive committee and your membership chair. Anybody in the room not a member? Okay, we're good. Most, Mesa County. Shauna Grieger, Western Colorado Contractors Association, also on board the Transportation Committee.
Rachel Richards, the mayor of Aspen, elected to get Highway 82 entrance to our town finished.
Jonathan Howe, Gunnison County Commissioner. Matt Schuler, Jackson County.
Fair, Senator Bennet's office.
The pool, Senator Hickenlooper's office.
While Cameron makes her way up to the third row, I'm Andrea Wilson, Policy and Operations Director for Club 20.
Good morning, Jasper Welch, Durango, La Plata County.
Morning, Chris Lopez, Community Relationship Manager for Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, Southwest Colorado.
Good morning, Jerry Lynn, who's also with Chatham, Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. And Caitlin Riddell, Administrative Assistant for Club 20.
We have
Everybody have their mics off? Go ahead.
Okay, I think we're good now. Before we jump into the agenda, just a couple of updates. Just for everybody's awareness, there will be six new transportation commissioners on the CDOT Transportation Commission. That's over 50%. Unfortunately, Karen Stewart, who is one of the commissioners from the Front Range and the huge advocate of rural roadways, is done now. So we have lost one of our good commissioners that has a lot of institutional knowledge when it comes to CDOT. We have a couple of good commissioners. I was informed this morning of Terry that is on the commission, and so we have another advocate as well. But unfortunately, some of that old history within Transportation Commission and CDOT is no longer there. Just a quick update on the 10-year plan. It sounds like, and Mike can chime in on this too if I don't get it all right, but it sounds like the Transportation Commission will probably not ratify the new 10-year plan until later this fall, pushing closer to probably Christmas. So they're still going through the TPR meetings and finalizing the list. Hopefully by the next meeting, we'll actually have a good list for everybody to see. Mike and I did a deep dive on the CDOT budget prior to after our last meeting prior to this one. The $100 million that was promised or given to us in Senate Bill 260, that was pulled back. Interestingly enough, if you look at the CDOT budget, it's promised to CDOT in the out years, 30 something. What's really interesting about that is the current legislature making promises for a future legislature that doesn't have to fulfill those promises. They are paid, so we'll see if that happens or not. A couple of interesting pieces in the budget. Maintenance's budget is same as it was 5 years ago, and we're paying the same moving forward. And with all of the moving around, everybody's aware, I hope, that the MOF dollars, multiple options fund dollars, which is a lot of the safer, or the Main Street grants and some of those other things, that was reduced, but within that, there was a.
Your co-chair can't,
Closer, it's awful loud, Cameron.
your co-chair can't hear you.
The co-chair's fine, he doesn't need to hear, he's deaf anyway, so.
Oh, we heard that.
I know, it's terrible. One of the other pieces of this that Mike and I noticed was, even though, budget's gone down on CDOT, and I'm going to say this without being biased in any way, shape, or form, is investing another large chunk of money into purchasing more Mustang buses. So, same pothole that we're driving through now, the new Mustang buses will drive through later. So I'll just leave it at that. Mike, is there anything else you want to add?
You said that very politically correct, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, I tried. We've worked on that. That was part of our therapy.
Yeah. No, I think that's a pretty good summary of what's going on. It is disheartening when you see transit and rail getting bigger budgets when they're cutting the main highway asset management budgets through everything that's going on right now with the legislature. So you see money being pulled back from CDOT, but you see the transit and the rail program growing, and it's disheartening, to be honest. But that's the situation we're in, and it makes Mike and I both real nervous when there's 5 commissioners remaining, 6 will be selected. Those are appointments from the governor's office and from the executive director. So it's setting a course for, they're setting up this commission to continue a lot of their mission forwards even after the governor is gone. That is my personal opinion. I will say that outright, but my filter's not, I still haven't recovered. My filter is broken about CDOT.
So on that happy note, well, Mike and I were hoping that CDOT actually would not, first thing on our agenda is the transportation plan survey. And Mike and I were hoping that that would still be available for all of you to move along and take that survey if you haven't done so. But because they closed it on Tuesday, we're going to actually run through the slides and just show you the questions that were asked. So with that, Andrew, would you be so kind as to pull that up? Did anybody in the room take the transportation survey? Okay, for everybody that didn't raise their hands, shame on you. So this is the first slide. Basically, it's just every 4 years CDOT does their transportation plan. I can tell you at the bottom of the survey is estimated to take 8 or 9 minutes to complete. I know my co-chair and I took probably 30 minutes because text boxes that are attached to the comment section ran out of space. So Andrea, if you'd be so kind, we can move on to the next one. So these are the 4 main categories for Fix Our Roads. It's kind of misleading. I'll just leave it at that because it starts out, I think what everybody on the western slope would probably say are huge, important topics for us and areas of concern. You keep going, Andrea. Funny that the first thing up there is fewer potholes. I checked all of these boxes pretty much. And then where it says describe what fixing our roads means to you, I ran out of space. I know Mike ran out of space. We're messaging each other. We can move on.
Hey, Mike, can you ask them to share screen for Zoom participants?
Oh, sorry.
Give me just a second. I apologize. Too many screens open.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Mike, for pointing that out.
So there's a couple of these questions that I'm just gonna leave up there and let you read them and look at your choices. And see what you would think. I think that the first few questions were not directed specifically at garnering a certain outcome. I think as we move farther into the survey, I think they were more directed at driving a certain outcome based on the question and based on the options that you had to pick. So how was that for being politically correct, Mike?
I would agree. This seemed very, initially I was surprised how unbiased it was, but then you can see bias starting to fall in.
So Andrea, if you would please.
No, that's
No,
not it. Give me 1 second.
yeah, we gotta go back. There's 4 now. There's number 5. Unfortunately, you can only pick 3 of these. If you all look down through the list, there's probably 8 or 9 of those that you would probably consider as extremely important. I ran out of space, so the ones on the right are also actually choices that you can make. I think all of those are probably very important to the Western Slope, if not the state, so. Next, please. I'm not gonna say anything, I'm just gonna let you read them. And I would ask everybody in the room, question 9, which one would you? I would imagine that majority of everybody in the room would probably say the middle one is probably of the utmost importance for our way of life over here, because of some of our roadways. Next, please. This one was really interesting. I should have done the drop down on one of these so you can see this. But I would imagine that Commissioner Linky from Grant County would probably say snow removal and winter maintenance was probably the most important thing after having some conversations with him last winter. I will not disparage CDOT completely. I will give them credit for at least giving us the opportunity to chime in on these things, but I would have hoped that they would have made it more apparent to a lot of folks to be able to go in and actually share their opinions of these. Next question, please. Just because I am a maintenance guy, I had the slider bar, I put 100% on pavement repair and maintenance. But interestingly enough, it's really hard to spread peanut butter of 100% across all of these areas. That's not necessarily how CDOT allocates their budget. So next slide, please. I changed my zip code like 4 times because I actually went into the survey like 3 or 4 times. So just so you all know, I took one for the team a little bit in the room because not all of you filled out the survey, so I don't feel bad about that. I actually live in Hinsdale County on one of those questions on question 14. But and I chose not to answer what is your age because I think this. I thought these were interesting questions. This one was an interesting question since not all of these are available to us. Mr. Slope, but work out. Yeah, are there any other comments or concerns you would like to share with the Colorado Department of Transportation? I know my transportation co-chair wrote a couple pages.
If they actually read it, they'll probably be able to figure out who wrote it.
And then question 20 pretty much is self-explanatory. And I think that's it. So
So,
go ahead, Mike.
yeah, I think, what's going to be really telling everyone is, we're going to keep watching for this and see what these outcomes are. What was the results of the survey? That should be coming hopefully before the next meeting, and at least give everybody an idea of what the survey correspondents responded to. It'll be interesting to see what some of the written comments are that went into that. Because I really want to see what do the people of Colorado feel about our roads and how CDOT is operating versus how CDOT might think they are operating.
So I would open it up for any questions or comments on that at this point.
What do you guys think? What do you all think we may see results?
That's a good question. We'll do some digging and let you know. It'll probably be later this fall. I would assume that they have these out prior to the actual Transportation Commission ratifying the next 10-year plan. Mike, do you think anything different?
No, I think it's probably going to be out before October. They'll need to bounce this through all the TPRs and MPOs. Let them see it. It's got to be part of the final report. So they need to get it done relatively quickly to get it into the statewide transportation plan final report that would be ratified either November or December of this year.
Jeff Mueller, Hinsdale County. Just a quick comment. I see in the survey places where mentioning electric vehicles and that sort of thing, and I just want to mention that there's new technologies coming out that are probably going to obsolete electric vehicles very near future, and I think they'd be ashamed to have a tremendous amount of funds wasted on charging stations. There's going to be something much better come. But I hope we're keeping those things, or at least looking at those things as these things get voted on.
Terry.
I'm right. Oh, geez. Unfortunately, I now live on the east side of the hills, and I just wanted to just mention that what I'm hearing all over the place is how excited the state is on for mountain rail, front range rail, and so it's just another thing that's just added to the budget of whatever they're going to come up with. But they are very excited about this, and I know the governor is really pushing the mountain rail.
So, Mike, if you don't mind my talking for a moment, Terry, something that I found that was really interesting. Mike and I were at the Colorado Municipal League recently, and we were talking with some of the DOLA representatives, Department of Local Agencies, couple representatives while we were there, and one of them even told us that they've actually been directed to reallocate some of the DOLA funding that would be used for local agencies to help do site studies for the for rail stations in this plan that's coming up. And so I see trends, and I can't validate this, but from that conversation, they seemed pretty disheartened that they had projects and plans that they might have been doing with locals that are now, that funding is starting to go to rail focus. And that, it's, we're seeing these things slowly being filtered off to try to push that forwards.
Schuler, Jackson County. I had a question for the committee. And can you expand on some of the CDOT town halls that they've had regionally? And if you've attended or what may have been, it kind of slides their hand when those representatives are answering the questions to the people. But I just wanted to, CDOT town halls that they've had regionally.
Well, Mike, do we pull back the curtain?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you.
Okay, so traditionally, both Mike and I have sat through CDOT town halls. And when those town halls happen, they are live. They do have, the transportation commissioner there, usually the regional director. And then they have quite a number of staff. They will have the engineering staff, the planning staff, you name it, and they're all there. The town hall happens live. All questions are sent in to CDOT through the virtual session. And it actually goes into a clearinghouse, basically, where the questions come into everybody and they can filter and rank all the questions to decide which questions will get answered and which ones will be passed on. There's also generally, if there's not a lot of questions being asked, there's canned questions that are ready to help fill the void and the gaps if that's what's going on. So that's kind of how those town halls operate. I will admit, having been in that role before, there are some questions that come in that are just not appropriate and you don't want to carry forwards. And that will always happen. But there are also sometimes there's good questions that may not be quite the way the administration, they may not want to answer the question, we'll put it that way. But most of the time, I would say, for having been an RTD and sitting through that, and then sitting down with our transportation commissioner on this, the staff that's supporting us is the ones that are trying to filter and manage what questions come forwards. There's also times where you get 7 of the same question from 7 different people. So we try to answer it just once. But that's, Scott, I don't know if that's answering your question, but that's kind of how those processes work. And you have to dial in. It's been really interesting in the past. When I do Southwest TPR, which is, a pretty small section of the state, we've had 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people call in. They're not there the entire time. You'll see it kind of a bell curve form where it really peaks early and then it starts weighing off. But that's some of the information that comes out of that. Mike?
We have a question in mind.
Jenny Harrington, proceed with your question, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't get to zoom in until late, but we've been asking this question from our area, from Garfield, Pitt and Eagle County. I'm representative of Holy Cross Cattlemen's, and we've been asking since before the WIF plan went into effect. And as it went into effect, how CDOT was going to manage carcasses, because they don't. And I've gotten, several emails back from regional to upper level, saying that we just don't the manpower and this is what we do. But we really do have concerns if ranchers have to manage the carcasses around their places, that if there are carcasses in near vicinity to some of these ranches, that CDOT or somebody should be responsible for cleaning those up, and not the rancher themselves. So that, and then also we do see a lot of just all kinds of trash along the highways. And I know there are the volunteer programs, but everything from bumpers to chairs to couch cushions, whatever, coolers. So I may have been late and may have missed this, but I just always want to push forward on this carcass issue being an attractant, and then just all the trash around. I'm a 5th generation Montrose Uray County resident, and just seems like we need to have some cleanup and have a little more pride, but also manage carcasses for the problems we know that they can have. So appreciate any answers you might have to that.
I'm gonna let Mr. Goolsby answer this because that he came out of that world very directly, and he can give you some feedback on how that operation works.
So, I agree with you completely, Jenny. I think part of the issue is with the maintenance budget, the way it is, there has to be certain decisions made on what they do and what they don't do. Unfortunately, with the Adopt a Highway program and the Sponsor a Highway program, it's another area that doesn't seem to garner a lot of volunteers, doesn't garner a lot of the sponsorships. It's that civic duty piece of a lot of these organizations that used to adopt highways and go out and do trash cleanup on a regular basis. Part of it is the liability of being out in live traffic, and as we all know, people drive faster and are driving more angry nowadays. So that's been a deterrent a little bit for a lot of these groups like the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, Gunnison, and some of the others that have adopted these sections of highway. Sponsorship, part of the Sponsor a Highway program was not completely rolled out all the way through the state. It was rolled out in certain areas where they actually would be able to get their investment back from the state perspective. So I doubt very seriously that Highway 149, and I'm going to pick on Lake City a little bit, unless Murphy Realty would like to do a Sponsor the Highway program on 149 in Hinsdale County. It probably never will get sponsored. So not to shrug the responsibility of what the maintenance folks do, but that's part of it. Unfortunately, one of the things that's happened through the years with removal of carcasses on the highway is the disposal piece of that. And the disposal piece of that is a lot of the landfills won't take them. I can tell you that being a maintenance guy and being on maintenance patrol, there is places that they were taken to and dumped because there wasn't anything around. So that's become an issue. And they're not fun to pick up when they've been smacked, especially if they don't get to them right away. But I think, Jenny, the best thing I can tell you is keep putting pressure on headquarters and keep putting pressure on CDOT as a department for them to come up with a solution. And I don't know if that's a really good answer, but it's unfortunate. There's not any places that don't have people in it. And that's part of the issue when it comes to roadkill and carcasses on there. So. And
Mike,
Thank you.
Matt, and then Rachel.
Mike, I just wanted to add one thing, and Jenny, pay attention. When they decided to do the carcass management, it was not asked of anybody. I asked all the county commissioners in my region if they had a landfill. Routt County does not have a public landfill. But nobody asked them if they were going to do the management. I talked to the guy that created the actual flyer that was supposed to go out, that was on the website, so then everybody knew about it, but they didn't tell anybody. But the decision was not made by asking county commissioners, local people, how that management stuff was going. They didn't ask people in the veterinary clinics to talk about how the security of the carcass was going to be either, because they were also talking about livestock going to landfills. They made the slide up, didn't ask anybody, and then made a program that nobody knew about. So I don't know if Mike and Mike knew about that, but I talked to several different people about that. Even the local regional managers at CDOT didn't know what their responsibilities were until they'd never seen a flyer. And when they saw the flyer, they're like, where did this come from? And I showed them the name on the bottom of it, and they had responses that varied.
Well, yeah, that's welcome to the rancher's world of what we're supposed to be responsible for, and including, was indicated, well, a CPW person, asked me why we hadn't cleaned up this elk carcass on our place. I'm like, okay, we're gonna go around now, we're gonna be responsible for elk carcasses all over the landscape, whether it's on private lands or public lands. We are not responsible for the elk carcasses, and we can't always get to them and find them. We're barely keeping ahead of what we have to do with the livestock carcasses, like you said, and just dealing with our landfills and stuff. So it's one of those things that they expect the burden to rest on ranchers and rest on counties and all of this without support for that. So I just want to keep raising that, so we keep it in the forefront that they're going to claim that some of these wolf depredations are unconfirmed, or that we had attractants or whatever. And so yeah, just a lot of issues. So we appreciate you, at least the awareness out there, and I don't know what we can do to solve it, but thank you.
Thank you. You know, I always thought they left the carcasses there so people would slow down knowing there's deer crossing, you know, whatever. But I just wanted to make a comment that, you know, when as the county commissioner, worked with the I-70 coalition when they were working on the EIS for I-70. And that came out with a preferred alternative of rail up to the resort areas on I-70. And that seems to be the major congestion point. But all that's ever really happened is adding the express lanes and bus stand. And they're now relaning Vail Pass and so on. And so it's a little frustrating for me to see what was identified by all these communities on I-70 where we have our major traffic, summer recreation and winter skiers, not get the rail money. And then now it's all in this front range, Southwest corridor, all this sort of stuff. So that's just frustrating. And the mountain communities just get ignored so often and for so long. I'm sure everyone feels that way because your budget is short. And when I filled in the survey, my number one thing was I think CDOT needs to come up with a sustainable funding plan that we can take to the voters of Colorado. And I know this has been tried before and I've been part of past efforts, but we just can't let the roads continue to deteriorate and transportation needs to go ignored. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy. Rachel, I think you're dead on there. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you sit on, but the roads are crap. I mean, I'll just gonna be myself. What we're talking about on carcass management is with the wolves coming in, if there are attractants on a ranch or near a ranch that can bring the wolves in, then the ranchers have less opportunity to get compensation for the kills on their properties. So not only do we have a continuing issue with not getting the carcasses off, now we've got a financial issue because of the wolf introduction, and it's a major issue. We talk about it every Monday in our wolf coalition meetings, and being able to find a place to take them is becoming more and more and more difficult. So once again, as we all know on the Western Slope, everything touches everything. It's just what we have here. And this is just another that these ranchers are dealing with. And now they're up in the summer grazing areas. It's probably less of an issue, but come this fall, it's going to be back again. So anyway, it's just a heads up how everything intertwines.
You didn't have to raise your hand because I was gonna call you next anyway, so.
Okay, real quick, Rachel, thank you for that comment about the funding and the need for more funding. One thing I want to clarify for everyone, technically, CDOT is not allowed to legislate for additional funding. That's not allowed as a government agency. And so it really does become incumbent on another group to do that. CDOT can provide data and information and help support an effort towards that funding, but they cannot take a position on it or actually lobby for it. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody, but I completely agree with what you said.
So we're gonna go to Jonathan and then we're gonna move on to our resolution stuff. So go ahead, Jonathan.
All right, Jonathan Howell, Gunnison County. Quick question, the gentleman from Hinsdale County had mentioned changing technologies and moving away from electric vehicles. And I'm maybe a little curious, my curiosity is getting the most of me. In Gunnison County, whether it's the city of Gunnison, whether it's Crestview, even small places like Pitkin and Marble, what we're hearing is, especially with the tourism being a good chunk of our economy, is more and more requests for utility infrastructure that supports charging of electric vehicles. And so I'm more than curious to understand, you know, as we're trying to work with our communities in Gunnison County, that their desire is saying, we have visitors who need this type of infrastructure. We want to maintain the ability to service all types of vehicles that come to our community. What's the big thing on the horizon? Change electrical, the need for charging stations and infrastructure to support electric vehicles.
When reading, keeping up with some of this, Toyota and Nissan both announced new engines, one of them being hydrogen based, the other being alcohol fuel based. And then we have yet another announcement of emission free gasoline engines and development of those. And I really think that investing in electric vehicle infrastructure charging stations a little like buying a VHS rental company when Netflix has just announced their business plan. There's some huge changes. I think we're seeing that disposal of lithium ion batteries is a mess. It's a hazard. It's an environmental disaster waiting to happen. You can, if you follow what's happened in California after the fires, they're dealing with that stuff. It's almost like nuclear waste. But the promise that's coming is that there's going to be very, very low emission engines. And we're not going to be required to use lithium ion batteries. And the future looks really bright in that. And major corporations, Nissan, GM, Toyota, they're all making these announcements in the last 6 months.
So with that,
Okay.
Henry, I think I'm gonna turn this over to Mike and you guys address the resolution.
Sounds good. So while Andrea's bringing up TR or 009 TR1 or the highway safety improvements associated with tourism, this was last updated in 2019. It's one of our older transportation resolutions that we need to get updated at this time. I think it's going to be a pretty easy lift for everyone. And I need to be able to see it. There we go. And so part of what this was, and I'm just going to use the title for right now. Initially, it said highway safety improvements associated with national landmark designations, and that was it. And so this was about, you know, the impacts of national parks, national monuments, and how it was impacting CDOT roadways. And so we as a transportation policy committee, we took this one on and we thought we need to step this back a little bit, not just focus on national parks and national monuments. And we felt we should change that to, you know, the increasing tourism impacting our roads on Western Colorado. And that's why the title change was done. And then most of the language in here refers to national parks and national monuments, but we're not going to name every national park or national monument. There's just too many to name. And there's been some recent additions. There could be some changes with the current administration. So we felt it would be better to generalize this more to state parks, national monuments, and national parks. And that's where you see most of these changes coming through. And then adding some other elements like safety improvements, pedestrian amenities. There are things that we can do to these roads above and beyond just the assets themselves. And we wanted to make sure that we covered all, I would say most of the needs that we see on our roadways. So with that being said, I'm gonna let people read through this for a minute, kind of chew on it. Usually there's a few comments, but transportation committees looked at this twice now. And we've had some comments back and forth on it. But this is pretty simple run through, I believe.
Yes, thank you both for your work on this. I think it's totally appropriate to bring it forward for modernization, and I like the improvements you've made thus far. I think there might be room for one more whereas, and I don't have the exact wording on it, but I think it should be alluded to as to how much tourism supports the state budget and the state economy. You know, it's not just a nice amenity, or we all like to go camping or something like that. This is you know, I think it used to be second behind agriculture. I don't know what chunk of the economy it is now, but I think that needs to be kind of mentioned. And the idea that the tourism communities, whether it's Montrose or whether it's Lake City in the summer or where, it's the communities that are feeling the impact of the roads being inadequate. And there could be a reference to the increased commuting workforce demands. I think every community is now seeing 50% or more of their workforce traveling in from 30 miles away in non-tourist communities. So again, I don't have language for that, and maybe the transportation committee could work on one more whereas that would again allude to how much money tourism brings in for the rest of the state economy. I know our community is a net donor in terms of state sales tax versus how much comes back to our community. I think most of the others are too. And it's just the commuting workforce needs and the actual getting to these safely to support the tourism dollars that flow into Colorado. Thank you if you would consider working on adding something like that, and I apologize for not having exact language.
Okay.
I would, you know, echo, the way. Somebody's got someone, okay, I echo, I think, comments. Tourism is important element of Western Colorado's economy. We do have in the tourism a resolution that does outline the number of jobs, the impact that tourism has. That may be where that might lie. It could be added here in the future, but I think what you've got here as far as signage is important from the transportation committee. The signage is something that we have alluded to in some of our discussions and resolutions. So we also have some of this. It is kind of a resolution that was over both committees, if you will. But as I read this, there's nothing that I disagree. There may be something in the future we might add. But if you would allow me, I would like to put a motion forward to pass this as amended, as presented today, to that role. So I make a motion to pass the resolution as amended and presented today.
Second.
Okay.
Well, Tom has presented the motion, Rachel has seconded it. Is there any discussion on that?
The discussion I make is perhaps Ron and I and others work on a new whereas to add at the fall meeting that would not conflict with any of what's already here, but would again just reference the type of needs the tourism towns actually have as well. So, and the contribution we made to the state economy. But that can be done or not.
Is there any input from anyone online?
And, if for reference, for both Mike and for Tom, you can pull some of that data out of the policy that's right now.
But Rachel, you bring up a great. And that's the commuting. Gunnison sees it going from Almont, Crested View, coming back the direction of Parliament. It has now become an issue with Gunnison. We're gonna see more and more and more of that as we see the values increase of our primary residents. So that may be something that should look at as well.
So not to muddy the waters, so to speak, but I think maybe there's a discussion or an opportunity around the community piece that maybe is separate from this, because it doesn't necessarily drive just tourism, it's everybody's day-to-day jobs. So, instead of adding the community piece into this, and I mean, I think we can beat this up with some tourism stuff, but I think from the perspective of the community piece, maybe we need to take a look at what we currently have, and if we can't add something to that, or to do another resolution or something.
Maybe the business fairs.
Yeah, so somewhere we need to address that because it's impacting everybody, so.
More and more.
Exactly.
So, Mike, I'm kind of thinking that one possibility that we do is we sit down with our tourism committee and kind of work on pulling that whereas together. And that way we can pull these things, pull it in, because I'm thinking, my initial thought is, and I agree, it's a good input, the whereas would be in 2024. And, we can pull that data from 2024, show what that was doing for the Western Slope as a whole and moving that forwards. So we don't get all the way down into the weeds by individual community.
I agree, Mike, that we don't need to add it to this. It's just something we need to look at for other resolutions in the future moving forward.
Well,
Oh, that was me, Andrew.
oh, sorry. I am currently the queen of working groups, so if that's something you guys want to put together, just let me know and we'll do a little working group on that.
Okay, so Andrew and I are marking words here. So just to clarify, everybody's good with where it's at right now in Tom's motion, and Rachel's second, and we'll move for a vote, and then we'll work on something else later.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that being said, all in favor of passing? Andrew, can you give me the number, please? Oh, TR 00-1 as amended. Please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Is passed, and Andrew, you are right, you thought this would go through fairly easy, so. With that, if anybody has anything else for the Transportation Commission, please speak, or Transportation Committee. Shut up, Bob. Harry.
I thought I would ask both mics, if you have heard anything about CDOT building housing for workers closer to where they're actually working, that a lot of them have to drive long distances, and I wanted to know if that is true, that CDOT is now building facilities for people to live in. Is that true?
Mike can just mute, because I can't comment. So, while I was still at CDOT, there was some opportunities that presented themselves. There was a trailer park, that was one block off Main Street in Frisco. They basically had one city block. Through the course of attrition up there, once the last CDOT owned trailer that was from like the 1950s was moved out of there. CDOT worked with Summit County and the town of Frisco to develop a housing plan. They built some really nice townhomes. They just got those opened up last year. I think CDOT has 6 of those townhome apartments in that facility itself. So they're managed by a management company. We did the same thing in Glenwood Springs. We worked with the developer that owns the New Canyon Adventure Park in Iron Mountain Hot Springs. There was some land building, trading and some other things. They built a new office for state patrol and CDOT in Woodland Springs. Brought in modular apartment units that and condominiumized the space above the offices. Interestingly enough, on the conversation yesterday with Chapa about AMI and some of those other things that go into control rent and some of that, unfortunately, where it was set in Garfield County, it was too expensive for our maintenance folks to move in. I believe right now there's one state patrolman that's living in one of those 6 that can be available to CDOT or state patrol at any time. They are exploring other options around the state or other opportunities. It's a slow process because a lot of the areas that CDOT has maintenance facilities on are on long-term leases with the state land board. So when that happens, it's a difficult thing to try to work through all of that. I know that in Eagle County, specifically in Vale, Dow Junction area, there was a fairly large trailer park in the Dow Junction facility right at the interchange from return. Working with some developers and the state land board, that trailer park is no longer. But what happened with that is that they're going to build, Eagle County and developers are going to build affordable housing, and there are a lot of apartments and everything, and CDOT's going to have an opportunity to put their folks in there. I know there's other efforts all over the state that CDOT currently has, and Mike, you can chime in, I think there's 6 or 7 locations that actually have employee housing right next to the facility. Being one of those individuals that got the opportunity or the punishment of living in one of those areas, you could walk to work. It's unfortunate, and it was mentioned yesterday about during the employee ownership thing about having employees report to you that you're the manager of a trailer park or apartments. Being their supervisor and also being their landlord is extremely difficult. So CDOT's trying to get away from that model as much and trying to engage more property management folks to do things and give the employees separation. Because one, it's really good to have an employee right there to be able to go plow snow. Flip side of it is it's detrimental to them and their families. You got close to work, and when your neighbors are the people that you work with every day and you can't get away from them, it's terrible. I can tell you that from personal experience. So they're working on it. There's some stuff I think, and Rachel might know this, in Pickens County. Well, it's actually Eagle County to the salt, in Elgeville. There's a state trailer park there, and through the years, there's been some talk with Pickens County, Eagle County to maybe do some housing in there. But they're working on it, I guess, is the short answer, but there's been some, I'm happy that there's been some movement and there's actually been some houses and some opportunities for the snowplow drivers and the state patrolmen to actually live where they work and not be right on top of themselves. So that answer that. Yeah.
And then it also plays into, CDOT has a policy that, and it's becoming more and more difficult all the time. And we call it the 30-minute rule, where our plow operators, ideally, the plow operator that we hire is supposed to live within 30 minutes of their workplace so they can respond more quickly, whether it's an emergency, whether it's to do plow operations, etc. There are some places in the state that the cost of living is so high, we've had to waive the 30-minute rule. And there are some people that are driving 45 minutes to an hour to be able to get to their place of work because of the cost of living. So that's what's driving some of the housing need that you're hearing about.
I got one more thing to add, and I'll go to Rachel. So one of the things that CDOT's done is actually they have a tiered system where they provide a housing stipend depending on what area you live in, and they're classified by like extreme hard to fill. Part of that is based on the vacancy rate. Part of it's based on they do a big real estate study and they look at the average rents and some of those other things. Unfortunately, it's because to our conversation we had yesterday about finding workforce and some of those things, What happened was when CDOT increased the amount of the stipend on the I-70 corridor for the folks to work in Summit County and Eagle County to keep I-70 open, they increased the stipend so much that they had people from Kremling, Winter Park, and some of these other smaller areas transfer onto the I-70 corridor because they were making more money with housing. So it was kind of that rob Peter to pay Paul thing, because then you could backfill the vacancy that they had created at Kremlin or Winter Park. Or I know there were guys from Steamboat driving all the way down to Frisco to work because they were getting more money for housing in Frisco than they were. So I don't know what the solution is completely, but I know the guys that work on the I-70 corridor make pretty good money for their housing site. So, and it's close to being able to afford to rent on them. Rachel.
Thank you. I'm going to comment on the housing, but then I do have a question separate. You know, for good or for ill, Aspen is often an indicator of what is coming down the pike for other communities. And I remember talking with Crested View and others about housing and, oh, we don't want to get a complicated program like that. And then 5 years later, they couldn't hire a new police chief. You know, it's just coming down the pike. In Colorado, it doesn't matter where you are, incredibly desirable place to retire, or a second home, or whatever, you know, any community. And but Aspen has been, again, out front because of the tourism and second home demand. Our schools have to have housing, our churches have housing, our hospitals have housing. RAPTA, Regional Transportation Authority, bought and converted a motel in Lemon Springs into 40 studios just to be able to have enough drivers. And we ended up in a little dispute with the State Department of Revenue, who said that the Regional Transportation Authority would not be exempt from sales tax for building that and the materials needed. We had to go to the legislature to get the law changed and continue to fight that. But, you know, our hospitals used to have a 15-minute rule for their nurses. And then they turned it to a 30-minute rule, and then they turned it to a 45-minute rule because they just couldn't get people anywhere near close enough until they built their own housing. So this is just coming down the pipe for every community in one shape or form and one timeline or another. But I wanted to kind of stress and ask the question, you talked about the TPRs are finishing up their work to go into the 10-year plan. How do you get more involved in your regional TPR and make a difference? And are they still meeting, or are they just doing these things in subcommittees now? Or are they, you know, what's going on with TPRs?
Okay, good question, Rachel. Every city, every county within a TPR has the ability to have one voting member participating in the TPR meetings and being a decision maker, much like we do here at Club 20. So it is important to get engaged on that and work through that. What we can do is you can go on CDOT's website, and Mike and I could probably try to get this information out to Andrea. The biggest thing is reaching out to CDOT, their planning team for each region, and asking to have your email address added to the TPR lists so that you can be informed when these meetings are coming up and any, you know, any information releases that come out of it, etc. That is the best way to do that. They'll probably get you in contact with each TPR chair and their staff to make sure that you're added to that list. That's the quickest and easiest way. We'll try to follow up with Andrea and get that added to the minutes for this meeting.
Thank you very much.
Oh, the other thing that you did ask, what's the status right now? I think right now is a very critical time. What has happened is CDOT from late last fall started their long-range planning process, which was more sharing data, sharing information about the state of Colorado, about what's happening in each area. You know, what is the crash rates? What are your top 10 crashes in your TPR or MPO? Different elements like that. And then this spring, they started transitioning into reaching out to the locals saying, what are your priority projects you want to see? And so the locals can start giving feedback on projects they want to see. If it's in Pickens County, Highway 82 entrance, you know, making sure that that is added in as one of the long range projects. Once they compile those projects together, CDOT does try to take not only TPR feedback, but they also try to use crash data, traffic volume data, you try to get some good analytics to help prioritize projects. And then they will come back to the TPRs and they will show them a prioritized list of the projects they asked for. And then they will also use estimated budgets that CDOT comes up with for each project to kind of go, this is what the cost of these projects would be. Here's a prioritized list based on the anticipated budget over the next 4 years. These would be the projects that could be rolled into the next 4-year plan for funding. Everything beyond that is to remain on that list for future funding that may be beyond 4 years, or if there's grant opportunities or other things that come along. And it's a 20-year list of projects. So it's a very exhaustive list. Each TPR does this, and then all the TPRs and the MPOs come together within a region, whether it's Region 3 in the northwest part of the state or Region 5 in the southwest part of the state, and they merge those prioritized lists together. And so even though you may be number one in the Southwest TPR, if the region and the TPR chairs decide that a San Luis Valley TPR project should be number one for CDOT to do first, that, you know, that's where the number ones start to get in their pecking order, and then the twos, and then the threes and the fours, because you're merging into a much bigger list and competing for those funds as a group. And the TPR chairs are the ones that really help to steer what those priorities in the end will be for the region. After that, then CDOT headquarters takes each regional long-range plan and pulls that up into the statewide plan for everyone. So that's, sorry to be a little long-winded, but that's kind of how this all rolls up into that ultimate plan. But fortunately, you're not competing with Region 2 or Region 1. You're really in that discussion for the funding that your region, whether it's Region 3 or Region 5, and what projects get selected based on that funding that's available to each region.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's really helpful for all of us to think about getting more involved with our TPRs. But wasn't the TPR budget also cut back pretty significantly going forward because of the state budget shortfalls?
Yes, so that was part of what was happening with the legislature this year, is they saw that there's a budget shortfall, and they've identified over the next 2 years, 26 and 2027, correct, Mike? They need to cut $100 million, and it'll be 67 million, I believe, this year, and about 33 million next year. So, and when I say 26, 27, everyone, CDOT starts their 26 budget July 1st, just a few weeks ago. And so they're on a July to June fiscal year. So we're technically in the 26 year right now.
Yeah, and again, for everyone else's information, I was listening in on one of the discussions, and they were talking about how you may have been granted money and you may have allocated it, but you're not going to get the money. So how do you put those projects on ice successfully? But we please go ahead and keep allocating the money so that when we go to the state legislature next session, we can say, well, wait, this money's already been allocated, don't cut us any further. And it was a really interesting dynamic about allocating money we don't really have. It's kind of like DOLA now telling everybody what their mineral tax payment will be, but we're not really going to give it to you because our funds have been swept.
Yeah. As an example, and I'm going from memory, so I don't have the numbers exactly perfect. Gunnison Valley TPR sat in on their TPR meeting about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And Gunnison Valley had a good plan for the funds that would go to local agencies for trails, for transit, et cetera. And they had to cut a little over $1 million in projects that were already identified and ready to be funded because of the cutbacks that are going on right now. The Southwest TPR had to cut $900,000 in projects that they'd identified because of this. It's happening to every TPR and every MPO across the state right now. They had good plans, but then they had to go back and collectively decide which projects wouldn't get funded because of this.
So Jonathan, I'm gonna go to you, and then if there's nobody else, then we're gonna move on.
Sure, I just wanted to jump back to the discussion about housing, CDOT, and the needs in our communities. And Mike, I think you brought up a really good point. CDOT doesn't need to be buying up properties and then trying to be a landlord and all the things you spoke about. Those are really challenging things. But one thing I've been in discussion with other commissioners, especially from rural resort communities, a lot within the Club 20 kind of area, is, I think that there's an opportunity. Most communities have some type of housing program going, and they're trying to build housing within their communities. And often what happens is everyone wants a slice of that pie, but no one wants to put money in the kitty. And really the stacking of and bringing resources in, and we're working on an idea that maybe could result in a legislative piece, but the idea is that I think that, and something we need to think about, communities, CDOT could actually be a financial contributor to projects within communities. And when you start looking at the capital stack that's required, everyone wants a master lease. They want someone else to build it, say, hey, hold us 5 units for our teachers or our ski area workers. But at the end of the day, skin in the game is what matters. And I think it would actually be more cost effective for CDOT if they found a way to participate. And then in turn, they have some units within communities, because then what happens is you have a housing opportunity within a community, and it's made up of folks that work for CDOT and teachers and the ski area. And we're doing the same push in our federal agencies, BLM, Park Service, they're struggling with housing, but getting some folks to put skin in the game. And I really think that that would really touch on those points of ability to respond, living in the community with people that serve the community, but not making it kind of a monolithic housing situation just for transportation. And so I think as some of us are working on that at CCI and CCAT, the county commissioner groups, I think there'll be something coming forward that really talks about how CDOT and the state can actually participate. And it's not just CDOT, it could be CDW, it could be these other agencies. But I think that's actually a place to address the housing issue, is if you get lots of folks participating in the funding, then your housing reflects the people that live in your community and serve your community, including those state and federal agencies. Thanks.
So I'm gonna go off books a little bit right here and give you some opinions on some things that have happened that I dealt with when we were trying to do this housing stuff. So part of it is the willingness of the community to do this. We ran into some issues. I won't specifically name the community, but we ran into some issues doing exactly what you're talking about. And they didn't, the powers that be decided that that wasn't something they wanted to do. Another community, we were working with the Forest Service in the county. That way. It kind of fell through because of the same reasons. So I totally agree with you, and I think that there's opportunities to take care of our teachers and all our first responders and TPW, all these opportunities where folks are providing this service and they're not getting paid a living wage, so to speak, for the communities that they live in. The part I would advocate for is what you said was, I think there needs to be an understanding and there needs to be buy-in from these communities and from the elected officials in these communities that, you know what, these people are providing you a service. These people are keeping you safe. These people, when you can't go to the Gunnison Hospital anymore, and you have to go to Montrose, there's got to be somebody on that road when it's snowing to make it safe for you to do that. That part of it, there needs to be some pushback with the community when the community's like, well, I don't want a bunch of workers. I don't want to do this affordable housing for workers and everything else. So we need to, like, officials need to say, tough, we're doing it. And so that would be my, if I was in that position, that would be one of the things I probably would never get reelected, because I would be like, screw you, we're doing it anyway. So I'll just leave it at that, but I totally agree with you, Jonathan. It's a, dealing with it for almost 20 years within CDOT and the struggles and the barriers that were put up, I take it very personally, and it pisses me off that people aren't more supportive of the people that provide those services in communities.
Yeah, I would just follow on that and say, I'm following in your line of thought, and it's interesting, the amount of criticism, yet still being able to get reelected. Building 252 units just outside of Crested Butte, the pushback on that was phenomenal, but at the end of the day, we're talking about people who are teaching our kids, plowing our roads, doing wildlife services, showing up for the community in meaningful ways. And if you can push through that resistance, you actually find people support housing, and I just think that we need everyone involved in that housing situation to be on board and not just expecting one government or one agency to carry the load. It's you're filling the bucket with lots of different people's resources, and then you're serving those people who serve the community. So thanks for that perspective.
And there's this really awesome resource that none of us can tap into, and it's the state land board. That I'll just leave it at that. With that, if there's no other, oh, yeah.
Just continuing on that same line of thought, I don't understand, why a community may decide to opt out of such a program, but private landowners may find that highly desirable. Especially if the program set up a way to, maybe make cash flow, neutral. So there's no impact on an income statement, but it would show asset on the balance sheet. For down the road, that might end up being a reasonable answer. I know I have some, but it could be available or something like that.
All right, I don't see anybody else in the room with their hands up. I'm gonna give this to Mr. McLaw, and then we're going to adjourn the transportation committee. The housing transport.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Mike. The one thing Mike and I've been brainstorming, we want to start thinking ahead on presenters for the next meeting, and specifically focusing on transportation. We do have one idea right now that we wanted to post to you guys, and this is HDR has a grant writing team that keeps diligent track of what federal grants are coming available across all agencies. They can provide various resources to help people with grant opportunities. Not trying to promote the company that I work for, but it is a great resource that if you're a small town or local agency and you're like, man, I just don't have the money to do this, is there a way I could maybe get it done? We could bring a person in to talk to everybody at the next Transportation Policy Committee meeting to talk about grants. But I also want to open the table to everybody on, are there other subjects that you would like us to start looking for speakers on? So wanted to open the table for anybody to give us your feedback.
Can I speak?
Yes, Doug, go ahead. This will be the very last comment or question.
Yes, thank you. And I'm totally off topic. I was a paid member, I think it was 21 or 23. I've attended one meeting so far this year. I appreciate that very much as I am on a very low disability. I'm coming from Washington State, and I had a substantial experience with working with the mid-sized business community in the city of Seattle. And I'd just like to raise one very big problem that I'm seeing here in Telluride and San Miguel County that is spreading to the remainder of the region, Cortez, Montrose, Delta, and that applies also to the current cuts in Medicaid. And I think we need to see those cuts targeted on behavioral health and the political advocacy organizations like Tri-County Health. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas.
So I
Oh, go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
I think with that, and the permission from the committee chair, we'll go ahead and adjourn the transportation committee. Let's take a 15-minute networking break and we'll join back here at 10:15 for tourism and outdoor rec.
The tourism committee will start in 1 minute. Everybody can take their seats and be prepared. We're going to start the tourism committee in 1 minute. Okay, the tourism and outdoor recreation committee will begin. Myself, I'm Tom Flagship, co-chair of the committee. My co-chair, Callahan, is right here, Houlihan is right here, and she's going to start the official part of our meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. I know, last night we were education or business affairs was between you and cocktails, and today we're between you and going home. So we'll get this show on the road. I think everybody, do we have anybody new in the room? Let's see.
I did.
That might wanna, oh, we have somebody new in the back.
Kathleen, would you introduce yourself? Let me make my way to you. Thank you, Jonathan. Well, hi, everybody. Kathleen Curry, and I'm here. I live in Gunnison County and am active in Club 20 and just wanted to listen in if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And then Mary Jo. That has joined us since this morning. We have Jeff Comstock out of Moffat County, Melody Villard and Brad McLeod have joined.
Perfect. Okay, and I believe everybody is now familiar with how to use your microphones. So please make sure that you kind of look around and make sure the person before you speaking's mic is off, and then speak, and then mute and turn off your microphone. And those online, if you could please mute yourself, we would appreciate it. So tourism, gosh, sometimes we feel like that's a dirty word these days. But the exciting part of tourism is that now we are, one of the reasons that Andrea is so busy with all her little working groups is because tourism is integrating itself into so many of our other subcommittees, including public lands, water, now we see transportation, energy, agriculture. It is in so much of our daily lives and what we do. So thank you all for coming, because we just kind of live and breathe it so much in many of our Western Slope communities. And we are all, while it is in many of our communities, our economic base, it is also something, again, that we are very concerned about, and how to we maintain our quality of life and the reasons that we live here, combined with economic development. And with that, with economic development, I'm happy to present our first speaker today. You may or may not know in your counties that you have an opportunity to increase your lodging tax. And so we have Matt Salka, who is one of our La Plata County Commissioners, who has been deeply involved in this process and is here to make a presentation about the lodging tax expansion and increase. Thanks, Matt, so much for joining us. Presuming you're in Durango or Ignacio or Bayfield or somewhere nearby.
I am currently in Bayfield right now, and thank you very much, Mary Jo. You know, as another dirty word is taxes, and so I'm here today to talk about the sales tax, the lodger's tax expansion, and so with that, I can kind of see the screen. There we go. With that, really, my past history, I'm Matt Salka, La Plata County Commissioner. Before that, I was a town manager or town mayor and a town trustee. And so I was able to see the ability of, you know, municipalities being able to slide the scale of the sale of their lodgers tax to be able to fit the needs that they need for their town or their city. And so, you know, when I was in my first term as county manager or county commissioner, sorry, I'm looking for new county managers. I'm also talking about sales tax in La Plata County, so I apologize there. But lodgers tax, and with that being said, is that really I couldn't believe that counties were stuck at a 2% cap, and that was from a very long time ago here. And so what we're facing here in La Plata County and reaching out to other counties throughout the state was, what could we do in order to increase that cap and also find ways to expand the scope of those uses? And if we go to the next slide, please. And so with that, you know, what is a lodger's tax? So to give you an example for La Plata County, that is for the unincorporated areas. So there was many confusions where it's like, oh, well, the city of Durango has a lodger's tax. So is that going to increase that even further? If there is a municipality that has a lodger's tax, they are not part of that. This is only in the unincorporated areas. Or for example, here in La Plata County, the town of Bayfield and the town of Ignacio do not have a lodger's tax, so it falls under the county lodger's tax. Previously, it was capped at 2%, and have great news as of earlier this year, the governor did sign this bill to be able to give counties the ability to increase that up to 6%. Of course, it's a tax, so therefore voters need to approve that. There are some counties in the state of Colorado that do not have a lodger's tax, and there are some that have, 0 to 2%. Now, this will give them the ability to establish a lodger's tax, or to be able to increase that from whatever percentage they're at to up to 6% voter approval. Next slide, please. Now, in the beginning, just a couple years ago, state legislators gave us an expanded scope on being able to put this towards housing and childcare. And so with that, what we were looking for was to be able to increase that to what we're facing in other counties is public infrastructure, our roads and road maintenance. Tourists use our county roads, and to be able to add that ability to be able to take care of some county roads, we would be able to would be a positive thing for La Plata County and many others in our region. The other item too as well is public safety. Tourists come to counties, they use our law enforcement, they use our fire departments and our EMS. And so that is something that we were looking forward to, is having the ability to be able to put some of that funding, voter approved, to be able to go towards those very important organizations and departments. With that, what we have is that, if you can go to the next slide, please, is that we have to, at minimum, keep it at 10% for for tourism marketing. So what it does is that still protects the ability to use that county lodger's tax to be able to go towards marketing, to be able to attract people to the county, for that ability to be able to show what you serve, what you offer in your county. And so we had no issues with that when working with Colorado Counties Incorporated, and being able to at least still sell that, because tourism is very important, and so therefore we want to make sure that that funding at a minimum is 10% for marketing. Also, too, as well, is that these funds can go to capital expenditures, but it has to be fall within, from the previous slide, under those requirements and voter approved. And so that would be able to, for us, build new roads, to be able to, if there is a tourist visitor center that you want to build, you can put that towards that. But it all has to fall within those 5 items that I had listed previously. Next slide, please. Now, what there was also a concern is, oh, hey, I already have 10% going towards housing. There was concerns that that could be taken away and moved somewhere else. And so this expansion bill, what it did was protect the existing funds to be able to keep that baseline for whatever percentage that goes towards housing or childcare. Now that roads and first responders have been added to the scope of this ladder's tax. And so with that, for example, for La Plata County, right now, we're still at 2%. We will be going to the voters next year in November to look into expanding those uses. Right now, currently, we have 30% going to our tourism, and the remaining percent goes to equally out to housing and childcare. And so what we want to do is bring this to the voters, protect housing and childcare, but also to add in that additional for our first responders for events, because that costs money, but as well as is being able to maybe address a certain percentage going towards our county roads. And so this is short, sweet, and simple. I second want to, if you go to the next slide, I also want to really thank Representative Katie Stewart, Representative Karen McCormick, as well as Senator Dylan Roberts and Senator Cleve Simpson. They have been instrumental on being able to get this through, working with Colorado Counties Incorporated. This was one where it was pretty much of a tough fight in the beginning. And so I really appreciate those 4 being able to help drive this home, giving counties the ability to be able to ask the voters, hey, where do you want these funds to go? Not just to tourism marketing, but also to let those tourists help pay and fund the services that we all use and need here in our counties. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any.
Matt, I have a question for you. So in your slides, you had mentioned voter approval. So if the counties each decide a certain percentage towards any of those 6 categories, is that where it needs to get approved, or do the individual projects need to also go back and get approved?
So if the project falls within those categories, and the voters approved the certain percentage allocation to those categories, then you will not need a additional, voter approval to build a building that's under like a tourist center. But the voters need to approve the percentage allocations to those items going, roads, first responders, childcare, and housing.
And then I also wanted to make the clarification that it is up to 6%, that they can approve any percentage.
That is correct.
2% to 6%, correct?
Correct. So some counties are 0, some are like 1%. La Plata County, for example, is at 2. We asked for a reallocation of that 2% before this bill was passed, to be able to go towards housing and childcare. Now, what will happen is that we're still stuck at the 2% because the voters approved it. We will now have to go back to the voters next year, November, and ask for them, hey, we would like to expand it to, making up a number, 6%. And this is where the percentage allocation is where we want. And that's how we can expand that use for that 6% cap, as well as the additional uses, roads and first responders. And if anyone has any further questions, I have my contact information is on that slide. Mary Jo has my information. I think this is very exciting. Taxes are not sexy. They're not fun, but I think what really sold it to our residents in La Plata County, as well as in our region that I work very closely with, like Archuleta and Montezuma County, is that these are tourism dollars. These aren't taxes directly impacting your residents in your county. These are visitors going to Airbnb, VRBOs, that would pay a small nominal fee to be able to help and benefit the residents of your county.
And thank you, Matt. We in Hinsdale County are looking at a ballot initiative for this November, increasing our lodging tax from a 2% to a 6%. And we are stating that each percent is going to go to A, B, and C. Our numbers are so small, we pulled out low-income housing from it. We just can't make a difference. Each one of our percent may be a 60 grand total. And it does affect your tourism people. I mean, I understand it's a tax paid by others, but as their prices go up, you are going to see some effect on our tourism economy. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I mean, I can't disagree with you, sir. It's one where all counties are different. Western Slope, I think we have a lot of similar issues and concerns, and but some counties aren't very tourist heavy. La Plata County is. Just to give an example, right now at 2%, we collect close to $1 million a year in lodgers tax. Now, if you go up to 6%, that's $3 million. That's doing a lot of good. But I completely understand that some counties, the numbers just don't add up. And also, too, small levels of tourism, that could affect those visiting those counties. Now, that's the great thing about this. It's not required to. You do not have to go to the voters. But if you feel the need and you think that it could benefit your county, then this is a additional tool in that toolbox to be able to bring to the voters.
Thank you very much for your work on that. I'm from the Aspen area, and we're facing this fall a potential 50.50 half% increase for our fire district, a quarter cent for a potential early childhood education regional authority from Parachute through Aspen, and a school tax, which currently is at 0.30, but they'd like us to double it to 0.60 funnel it through a nonprofit to our school district because the state took away the funding for high cost of living areas and declining enrollment. But that really is going to push us over to about 10.35 basic tax. Then the lodge will already have a 2% tax on top of that for our chamber. And then short-term rentals pay additional taxes. So I'm kind of wondering, how do people feel in general about what will your sales tax at a hotel be in La Plata when this goes through? And what is the breaking point for our tourism base? I mean, it just, for me, I'm a little worried that someone's going to spend their money on a big dinner, get the taxes at the end, and the waitress will get a smaller tip because you didn't realize it would go up that high. It's just kind of a dynamic that people always thought 10% was the magic number that hotels can negotiate down the cost of renting the conference room or the meal, but they can't negotiate down the sales tax. And at what point does Colorado just kind of push through that? We're too expensive to visit, let's go to Idaho or Wyoming.
And I apologize. Your voice just wasn't as loud, but I think I heard what you said. Honestly, La Plata County is looking at a sales tax initiative too as well. La Plata County is the 5th lowest in the state of Colorado on property tax, and so I can't speak for the county that you're in, but you're going to have to, it's a give and take. You're going to have to reach out, something that we will be doing, the county commissioners for La Plata is engaging with the public to say, hey, look, this is a tool that we would like to use. These are the options, and where do you feel that we should, raise that lodger's tax to? Right now, we're needing to, it's looking like for next year's budget, we will probably have to cut another additional $7 million from our budget. We are in the hole severely. And so a sales tax it's not approved yet, but is potentially going to be an option for La Plata County. But then, okay, we just raise that another additional percentage if the voters approve it. Then now we're going to add lodger's tax on that. That may change that discussion for La Plata County in next year, November. But again, this is a tool that you do not have to use. It is not required by you, but it could do a lot of good, and I understand it can do bad, but that's where I was explaining to some commissioners that were concerned about this, that then just don't bring it to the ballot.
This will build.
Yeah.
Jonathan Halkier, Gunnison County Commissioner. Matt, thanks for joining us. I know Gunnison County and La Plata, we've all worked on these issues for a while now, and the original expansion idea came out of Gunnison County. And Rachel, I want to address maybe your question. Right, but to give you an idea of like what's the sensitivity for folks. So in Gunnison County, we have a local marketing district, which is another vehicle, which is up to 4%. We have a 4% tax on any lodging in the county. So if you stay in anything for shorter than 30 days, we assess that. Mount Preston Butte, of all the municipalities in Gunnison County, has one of the higher sales tax rates. So they have their 2.9% for the state, 1% Gunnison County tax, a 1% for our transportation district, and then their tax is 5%. So they're at 9.9%. Add on to the 4%, you're at 13.9. So that's, if you stay in lodging in Mount Preston Butte, you're going to pay 14% on that lodging. We've had that in place for years, and all we're seeing is astronomical growth in people still lodging. There seems to be, and this might be kind of more restricted to ski resorts, but people don't really seem to shy away from that 4% lodging tax, because when you go to dinner, it's not on that dinner tab. It's not on, I went and bought some souvenirs or something, at a retail store, because it's only on lodging. But I would like to think that probably that sensitivity in Gunnison, I don't know that in the city of Gunnison, people could really absorb that much. And so I think there's some sensitivity to where the lodging is and what type of activity typically fills that lodging. But we have noticed revenues continue to climb. And what we did when we had the 4% in place, we passed the ballot measure for expanded uses. And we put ours as up to 40% can be used to workforce support. So we included in that recreational infrastructure, housing, childcare, and we also can use ours for economic development as well as marketing and things like that. And so to Matt's point, going to the voters and asking very specifically about what you want to use it to, and to the Hinsdale County piece, one thing, and it might be different with the lodging tax. Matt, I think, has a much better grasp on the lodger's tax. I know LMD really well, but we were able to ask the question instead of saying 1% goes here, 1% goes there, 1% goes there. We said the local marketing district board can allocate up to 40% of those revenues, and then we outlined what they were. So for us, it was again, recreation infrastructure, housing, and childcare and workforce support. And so we kind of kept that door open that way. And then that way we spend 40% some years, other years a little bit lower, but it gives us the flexibility to be reactive to needs in the community when they happen. And so I'm not sure if you can ask the question that way with a lodger's tax. So maybe that's a question for you, Matt, that when you go to the ballot, do you have to be specific in percentages to uses, or can you ask a percentage amount that can be used and then direct the voters to what that will be used for?
Yeah, yes, you can. You do have that ability to as well. And then, to your point, I've been very fortunate, and I traveled to New Orleans a couple of years ago, and they were at 12%. I think a lot of time when tourists, and I can't speak for all tourists, but what falls within my budget, and they don't look at that tax line item. But it is listed. But you know, we're seeing increased tourism coming into La Plata County. Again, this is something where you just, you know, if you feel that you don't want to bring this to the ballot, that's an option for you all. But you can, you know, it's after, you know, depending on what county you are, talk to your attorneys, you can list it that way. It's just more of what do the voters want to see at what percentage or up to number to be able to put that. But of course, you don't want to tie your hands to a ballot initiative too as well, right? Because then now you're stuck with that certain percentage only going to that initiative. But there are ways to form your ballot language to be able to help the needs that you need there in your county to up to numbers or an actual figure, dollar figure.
Can you clarify if a community of the town or the city already has a lodging tax, would this tax go on top of that, or it's just for ones outside of municipal boundaries?
Great question. This does not impact any municipality that has a lodger's tax. And so City of Durango has a lodger's tax. If we implement an increase of 2% to 6%, that does not change anything in the hotels, motels, or Airbnbs falling within the municipal boundaries.
However, Matt, let me ask a question. If it is an incorporated lodging district, can they add a percentage to what they have currently?
So for a municipality that already has lodger's tax?
So for example, in Pagosa Springs, the town of Pagosa Springs has an additional lodging tax of 3%. Could they change that 3% to say 5% now, based on this new bill?
Right.
And voter approval, yeah.
Right. So the county lodger's tax does not touch any. So if Pagosa decides to raise, it does not impact or change anything within the unincorporated county lodger's tax.
Mary Jo, maybe I could just add to stay to track on this question. One of the things we did in Gunnison County, when we passed our local marketing district, the town of Gunnison had a lodging tax that it was one at a certain rate. Crested Butte had one at a different rate. Mount Crested Butte had none at all. So the way we asked our question in Gunnison County was, if the voters approved our local marketing district for a county-wide assessment, then those individual town ones would go away. And so what we found is that people in Gunnison County actually thought it was better to have a county-wide. So the way we asked the question on the ballot initially was, if approved, the town ones go away, it's 4% for the whole county. If the measure failed, the town rates stayed in place. So I think working with, depending on how your community, what your municipalities in your county, depending relationally what they're like, that's another way, and town attorneys and county attorneys can help shape that ballot question. But you can ask a question that would be countywide, and if it passes, then you get a uniformed piece, and then you got to, go through the whole kind of discussion of who will manage that money, how it's allocated, those kind of things. But the question can be asked if you're worried about having different rates throughout a county, you could do a countywide ask on a ballot that then would make a uniform amount. And if the ballot measure doesn't pass, whatever's in place would stay in place. So there's a couple different ways to approach them.
Now, would that be due to the fact that you have an LMD?
Yeah, well, I think we asked it in the form of LMD, but my understanding too is that you could do it if they're, like in La Plata County, if there were, some of the different municipalities had different rates, you could ask an overarching question. But then you also have to agree, then you'd have to have stipulated in the language, well, who would be the board that appropriates those funds and what can they be used for? There's devils in the details, of course, but it's there's a way to make it uniform, but everyone has to agree that. In some counties, that's harder than others.
Yeah. And I think that's, for La Plata, that may be difficult, but it's something where it's a discussion that I think all counties should have with their municipalities.
Actually, we're Jackson County, and I have two questions. First one's easy, the second one's gonna suck. First one is, what is the lodging tax committee
and the representations and the agreement with local areas of chambers of commerce, because there's a lot that they funded together. There's some that don't fund it at all. That's the first question. Second one is this is a revenue stream that the state is gonna figure out, and they're gonna bang you all on the head and pass legislation statewide that says, here's what we're gonna do. You guys aren't gonna get a decision. You're gonna limit it statewide through a statute. And the revenue is not gonna be held in local communities. It's gonna be to fund something that the state determines what it is. And if you don't believe that will happen, let's talk rules.
On your last question, yeah, on your last question, I wish we all had a crystal ball to know what the state would do or the federal government, but as of right now, we don't know. And so I hope that does not happen for the state to come back, because I feel counties should have counties, which are the voters of those counties should have the right to be able to say what they can do with those funds. But back to your first question, what was it again, sir?
Yeah, sorry, he's out of my range. He asked about the funding and how many, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, how many of the chambers of commerce, get funding from this, resources currently from the lodging tax dollars, and how is this gonna impact that?
So I can only speak for La Plata County. We had a tourism called Visit Durango, which had that percentage of those lodgers tax at the time before we went to the ballot last November, was 100% of that 2% funds went to Visit Durango for tourism marketing. What they were very concerned on, and it was a hot topic, is when we brought it to the ballot last November to reallocate that 2%. We allocated on the ballot was 30% to tourism-based industries for tourism marketing, and the rest going to housing and childcare. It was a hot topic, but what happened was that a lot of families, a lot of mothers came in support, and it really took over the discussions on that this is a tool that families want and have. And really, we did not have too much pushback from our chambers, Ignacio, Bayfield, or the Durango Chamber on this. They did not receive those fundings. It was a tourism business called Visit Durango receiving those funds, which they weren't too pleased on the lowering of that allocation. But we're in a flux here in La Plata County. Visit Durango is slowly getting dissolved. The city of Durango is picking up a tourism sector for them to do marketing. We're in negotiations with the county, with the city on where does that remaining 30% go currently. And so really, it just depends on your county, but I can see if your county lodgers tax goes to them, that is something that you will definitely hear from your chambers. But you have to find that equal balance, right? With tourism, you need homes, you need childcare. If you don't have any of those, then you don't have businesses being able to operate efficiently without their staff being able to have a home or to be able to take their children somewhere to be able to be seen while their staff is working, 8 hours a day.
Jonathan Howell, Gunnison County. To your question about, the concern of, Jackson County, it sounds like there's some balance between tourism and the chamber, things of that nature. What we did here in Gunnison County is actually by having all of that kind of run through the county, we actually relieved some of the duties of our chambers of commerce. And they got to use the revenue that they got from businesses joining the chamber to focus their activities on business development, business growth. And the one thing that there's a Mount Crescent View Chamber, and then there's a Gunnison Chamber, but they also operate visitor centers. So we started allocating $25,000 a year to each of those visitor centers to help them meet the financial needs of those things. But what we found in our community was the discussion around what does that balance look like? We were able to assure them that we can help fund the visitor center, which is part of a tourism function, but the actual revenues that we're putting towards marketing and we're putting towards getting folks to our community became a unified message. And so we didn't have to rely on the chambers of promoting each and every event. They got to focus on business development. We help them financially with the visitor centers. And we do that yearly through a contract for service. And so I think within each community, you kind of take the temperature is now saying each community is going to be different, each county or municipality. But there's a way to balance that out. And I think just clear communication with constituents and communities, you get pretty quick to what the right mix and balance is.
I completely agree with you. It's one, communication is crucial to your chambers, to your residents. Really, what happened when we did this reallocation of 2% last November was it spurred a positive reaction from the La Plata Economic Development Alliance. They started doing a housing study. They did a childcare study. So now we have actual data to know what would benefit La Plata County using, government funds, so lodgers tax, through via P3 contributions, public-private partnerships. And so what's great about this is now we have the hard data to know, all right, at what levels should we fund for housing and childcare, and what remaining balance, depending on what percentage we're at, could go towards our first responders as well as our road infrastructure. And so at least here in La Plata, it really helps spur the discussion further on, we realize that we've got to take care of our residents and who work for these tourism businesses, our restaurants, our resorts. And so it really helped open up the conversations further on lodgers tax and how we can benefit our residents.
That was not the question.
Sorry.
Just so you understand, the question was about when the state decides that this is a revenue stream that they haven't done, they were 1.2 billion short this year because they renamed the Oil and Gas Commission the Carbon Management Commission. They built the state on the back of something that they hate. Okay. When they decide to remake the money coming in the state on the back of something they love, tourism, and this is a lodging tax thing, that's a revenue stream. My question was, how do you make decisions that the state can live with when the state still has the ability to come in and take it all away from you in one fell swoop? The question was, what happens when the state gets involved? The question was, the state is going to look at that as a revenue stream to replace the 1.2 billion that they're not getting from excise tax. They can consider it an excise tax because now if the state's selling tourism, that's part of their excise. That's the question. It doesn't have anything to do about what you do locally. It has to do about the decisions you make locally that affect everybody else in the state.
All right. Thank you for the clarification. Sorry, my computer speakers are not as loud, so it's hard to catch some of that. So with that, I don't know. That's commissioners using Club 20. That's commissioners using CCI or CCAT, or, to be able to help be in support or fight the fight. That is a major concern, that we could lose those funds towards our local county, our counties. So I don't know, sir, when that time comes, or if it starts to be discussed on that potential threat. We all need to work together on whatever that message is to either assist and let it happen, or to be able to say, no, you're not touching our local funds to help our residents. I hope we don't get there, but that's something that we'll definitely need to raise those concerns with organizations like Club 20.
If I look around. Okay, Matt, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time, the involvement, and yes, every county will be looking at this, I'm sure, in their own jurisdiction. So thank you so much, and hang in if you want. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
All right. That being said, I just have a little bit of information that I wanted to share. It came out in the Aspen Times, actually. And it is just about tourism here in Colorado. We talk about the tax and does it matter or not? And certainly they're finding throughout the state of Colorado that tourism numbers are declining. I'm not sure how that is in everybody's community. Ours are certainly not in Archuleta County. They're maybe not as high as they used to be, but that does not seem to matter. However, this article does seem to, if you can scroll down just a little bit, please, Andrea. it does indicate that taxes may be, part of this, that people do have, an interest in taxes and what they are being, and what they are paying. So we can send this article out to this link out to anybody who may be interested, but, it's saying, and in the state of Colorado, they have been finding that the booking rates are declining. Again, we are not seeing that, and I know there's some other communities that are not. But it's certainly something as you move forward with this conversation, and, you know, I think Jonathan brought it up, Rachel brought it up, it's something just to take a look at. And certainly the impact, of the cuts that we talked about earlier, to our parks. That is certainly an impact, and international travel appears to be declining as well. So as you make these notes, just know that there are some resources out there for you. And this just talks about rising average daily rates, including the taxes. So anyways, just thought if anybody is interested, we can certainly send you these links, which were included on this agenda. So, Jonathan?
Jonathan, Gunnison County. I appreciate you bringing that up because it's been really interesting. We track with a lot of data, the trends that we're seeing here. And one thing we really try to focus on by having a countywide local marketing district and marketing tourism here is we have certain, like in the summer, we don't really have to market tourism here in the summer. Gunnison County does really well in the summer. We started focusing on our shoulder seasons. How can we continue to support hunting during that hunting season? Winter is a place where we still have a lot of capacity. And to this article, what we're finding in Gunnison County is that our visitor numbers are actually down. But because we've targeted the soft spots where we want to see more people in our hotels and in our lodging properties and even in the short-term rentals, we've been able to round those out. So it actually allows businesses to raise their rates some. And that's a fine tuning piece for each individual lodging property. But what we're watching in the community actually, it feels good about this, is our numbers have come down a little as far as how many people are coming, but the revenue's gone up because we're filling in those soft shoulder seasons. I know you run in the chamber, you understand that. There's always like, how do we keep the market shares we have in the good times and how do we fill in those edges? We've been able to start filling in those edges. So we've seen revenue go up, even though our actual numbers of people visiting the county have come down. So it's an observation of something that's happening here.
I think that if you, for those of you who do have marketing entities, to take a look at something like that, we do not as well contribute much, if any, of our marketing dollars to summer as well, because everybody, we don't need any more, but we have also taken up our shoulders, particularly May, September, October, and encourage people that are producing events to do something in the shoulder seasons, to try and do that balance. So it is a fine line. You know, there are some entities that won't agree with you that say you need to market all the time, but we found that that has worked for us as well. Okay, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Aren't the numbers down across the country? Isn't it more a reflection of the geopolitical environment and not necessarily the draw in Colorado?
Yeah, and as this article indicated, a lot of these are mountain towns, but their nationwide numbers are dropping as well. But in the mountain towns, Idaho, Wyoming, Mexico, those numbers are dropping probably maybe a little bit more significantly, but major cities are also dropping.
Having come from Sarasota, Florida to beautiful Colorado, I was just looking at the numbers there, and tax rates on the hotel room in that area were 13% total, 7 to the state, 6 to the county. Didn't seem to affect tourism.
And so that may be a part that, you know, the county, the state, they support it, who knows? Okay, to get us out of here, let us move to our resolutions. We have two that we would like to address and one that we need a refresher on, that we know we want to be a part of a working group. So on your agenda, the first one we have is to amend the scenic byways maps. We have pretty much just updated this, but we still feel with all of the scenic byways that we have, these are some really important draws for our community. So any questions or comments on the scenic byway maps to amend? Or do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to, DO 94 dash.
Hear a second.
A second.
Who was that?
And
I'm
who was
sorry.
that?
You? Oh.
Thank you. Okay, oh, Mike, not just, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion by Mike and second by Mike. Just kidding. Jeff, you're out of line there. You need to change your name to Mike. That's the Mike segment. Okay, all in favor of amending as presented? Anybody in opposition, say no. We have approval, thank you. The next one that we have is signage for tourism on Western Colorado highways. Now, interestingly enough, you know, this kind of came up in the transportation meeting. So there is, policy on the tourism books in the tourism subcommittee for signage. And so this has, last come out in 2019. We did not see at this point in time any changes, but are happy to make any should you feel there needs to be some updates. Otherwise, we recommend that be renewed as presented. Rachel? Did I hear, is that Diane? Thank you.
Second was Diane.
Diane.
Thank you. I can't turn my neck.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of renewing TO 00-1? Signify by saying aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. I'm going to turn the next topic over to my co-chair, Tom Kleinschmidt. So thank you, Tom. And this is in relation to it is the, what do we have? Support for the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, which was deleted at the last, at the spring conference. And so some of this, I know there was conversation, Jonathan, if you could maybe weigh in. I think Rachel, you may have had some comments too. We are looking to either bring this up with different points. So if we could have a discussion on this, please.
Again, Tom Kleinschmidt here. TO 16-1 was put forward by the committee to the board, and the board, not only it was a standing resolution that was simply updated at our last meeting. It did update the job numbers, what the value of the industry is to the state of Colorado, and some spending numbers. Getting the numbers from the the outdoor recreation office, some of those numbers actually went down, and I was surprised by those. They're going down, but I was particularly interested in just making sure we had accurate numbers in what we presented. So we've gone through this a few times. Again, to just understand what the outdoor recreation office is with the state of Colorado. It was the second outdoor recreation office established in the United States. The first one by a state was for the state of Utah, the first one. Now there's 31 states that support this kind of office independently. And given the numbers that you see here, it's a significant part of the economy in Colorado, and certainly the western slope of Colorado. So as I found, we had a presentation from a local, Grand Junction, outdoor rec, coalition at our last meeting, looking at what our, numbers were and getting fresh numbers from the outdoor industry office. And it is a division of OEDIT, that we had different numbers, and that it was important to get the correct numbers to the board. Now, when this went to the board, my understanding is that it was not only, many times we have these things on and we simply keep it, it's the revisions didn't match what the board wanted. Well, not a word was changed in this except the numbers. And again, some of them were revised downward to reflect some new studies that the Outdoor Recreation Office did. Now, this was deleted in a split vote, and I think we don't have, it isn't on the agenda today, but I would like input from this group about how we might be able to support the Outdoor Recreation Office and amend the words that are on this document that may change people's thoughts. I think Club 20 being the voice of Colorado, voice of Western Colorado, certainly outdoor recreation industry, there's a lot of businesses in our rural Colorado that do make money by offering recreation opportunities. And so I'm a bit surprised that the state of Colorado, Club 20 doesn't support this office, but if they don't, they don't. And I've lived with other resolutions that this Club 20 is put out that I absolutely don't believe in, but a majority of what happens here is important. But is there any salvaging this to put it forward to the board again? I'd like to hear from some of you if there is something to change. I think the second whereas establishes the Governor Hickenlooper did create the first Colorado Outdoor Recreation Office. Perhaps that is a name that people would like to see deleted from the history of what goes on here. I'm not sure, but I would like to hear comments. So I think you've got the background. I'm a little surprised that Club 20 doesn't support the office, but I think it's important for me to understand, and people in recreation that would like to be members of Club 20 understand why this office isn't supported. So,
Michael?
So why was this resolution put forth to the board to delete if it's not something you want?
It was not put forth to delete, it was put forth to amend, and the vote came to delete it, and that is what the vote went through.
What was the logic or why make the motion to delete or anything like that?
To delete was. Yeah. Andrew, do you know?
Give me just a couple minutes and I can find it. Oh, okay, thanks. This is Kathleen Curry from Gunnison, and this is an important discussion, I think, because during the last legislative session, there was a bill to put some of the recreation responsibilities at the state level over at Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And I think what we were told in the Capitol is that there were competing views within the executive and the administration regarding where the lead should be on recreation investments and conversations. And that bill didn't get out of committee, but it's likely to come back next year. So there'll again be a debate about where should recreation conversations be housed. Should it be over at CPW or should it be within this office? So I actually think this is a really relevant conversation for Club 20 to be taking up right now. And Mary Jo, while I'm still looking that up, we do have a question online from Jeff Comstock.
Okay, Jeff, hold on. I'm going to take Jonathan and then you're up next.
Jonathan Howe, Gunnison County. I'm glad we're actually having this conversation because I think, Kathleen points to I think some of maybe the fork in the road around what the discussion's about. There's two real different things around outdoor recreation. There's the managing of recreation on the land itself, where are the appropriate places for trails and river put-ins, and how does that interact with, say, ranching or water rights or wildlife issues. So there's the management of recreation itself, but one of the key focuses of the outdoor recreation industry office is the impact on the economy of Colorado on the business side. And I think that's a really important piece to understand. That's one of the biggest things they do. If you remember the opening comments from the representative from here at Western, Western has one of the first outdoor MBA programs in the country, which combines an MBA with the outdoor industry. The Colorado Mountain College report we heard, they talked about their programs as well. What we're seeing is that Colorado as a state, of course, is a hotbed for where outdoor industries want to locate their, whether it's distribution of the product, production of the product, think tanks around coming up with new products, they want to be in Colorado. And what we often know is that what has been happening is the cost of doing business in Boulder, Denver, the Front Range metro areas has hit the point where it's hard for small businesses to make an entry level into the outdoor industry. But we're seeing them pop up all over the Club 20 region. I'll give you a good example. Alpaca Rafts down in Mancos is an amazingly large employer for a community of that size. Look at Osprey Packs and their impact in Cortez. Here in Gunnison County, one of the largest private employers is a company called ID Sculpture. ID Sculpture makes those artificial climbing boulders that you see in parks and playground equipment. They ship that stuff out of Gunnison around the world. We have a small company here that is a woman-owned company that's born out of Western Colorado University that makes outdoor apparel for women. My wife has a company that makes an outdoor sports beverage that counters altitude sickness, based here out of Gunnison. Montrose and Grand Junction both have huge hubs for outdoor companies. And it's not just mountain biking and skiing. We're talking about fly fishing. We're talking about the hunting market has exploded into a whole new realm of clothing. We have a clothing company, another woman-owned company here in Gunnison County called Proas. And so when you start to look at what the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Industry Office has done, tying all these things together, it is funding and it's helped grow these companies, provide meaningful loan opportunities, business support. And so we kind of separate the idea that the outdoor recreation department isn't as focused as much on things Kathleen mentioned, the management of some of those specific activities and where they should or shouldn't take place, but it's focusing on business development. And I think that a lot of our small rural communities are recognizing the boom that we see. And so if we look at some of the small outdoor industry companies in the Club 20 part of the state, there are a lot of towns that some of their bigger employers are these small outdoor companies, and that's who the Outdoor Recreation Industry Office is supporting. The trade shows, the gatherings in the state, things of that nature, that's made a positive financial impact on Colorado. And so when we think about, I think it's oftentimes we just hear outdoor rec and we think the activity, we're not thinking about the business side. And the Outdoor Recreation Industry Office through Elected is really connected to the business side in a heavy way.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Jeff Comstock?
Thank you. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah.
I couldn't hear a response. Are you able?
Yes, Jeff, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate being able to talk on this. I think Jonathan and Tom and a couple of you in that room, Kathleen, have just highlighted what really needs fixed in the resolution. I was one on the board of directors that voted against this on the split vote because the resolution is, I believe, is significantly vague and outdated. I mean, it urges support. We all know for a decade that recreation has been supported by the governor's office. This is as strong of an administration support and recreation is out there. And so those therefore be it resolves don't need to just say something like we support it. It needs to say, and that second one, Kathleen brought up the real issue of where the office is housed. We need to come up as Club 20 a recommendation as to where that's housed. And if it's still this, if that second bullet point is true that it's still a division of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, then fine. But let's have that talk and agree on it. That was during the board of directors meeting. This was discussed that it didn't do us a lot of good as evolved as outdoor industry has become. We need to specify some of the things like Jonathan just mentioned in that resolution and talk about where Club 20 stands. Just the broad generalness of, yeah, we support it, doesn't match where Club 20 is at in today's world. We need to add some specifics into that resolution and have a discussion about where it's housed. Earlier in this discussion, it was characterized that Club 20 doesn't support outdoor recreation. I want to be crystal clear that the board specifically said that was not true. The board very clearly said they don't want, by deleting this resolution, they did not want to send a message that they don't support it. They wanted to send a message that the resolution needs to be current. And so there is absolutely support for the outdoor recreation industry by Club 20. So I couldn't tell whoever said that earlier that said that they don't support it anymore. Club 20 doesn't support it anymore. That's not accurate at all. And I just think that resolution could use some specifics to make it relevant today rather than just a general statement that says we support the industry.
Thank you, Jeff. I think we needed that clarification. Shauna?
Shauna Grieger. One of the things I remember from our meeting, I wasn't sure if it was included, the reason why it was originally being looked at to be removed, was it included in one of the other resolutions? No?
So
Okay.
it wasn't on the agenda to be deleted. It was on the agenda for these amendments. So I brought up that copy that was proposed to the board at spring conference. And then we are researching who made the motion because it did not copy onto the laptop. So Brittany's working on that right now. So I can get you that answer of who made that motion and who seconded it. But these were the amendments that were proposed. So it was on the agenda to be amended and then it switched to a delete.
So Diane Schwenke, so I think regardless of what happened in the past, I think what Jeff's like, yes.
Yes.
It's all me, it's my electric personality.
Yes.
So Diane Schwenke, regardless of what happened in the past, I think what Jeff said is what I recall. And I think it's important to note that Club 20 is fully in support of a major economic driver in our region. But I also agree with Jeff. I don't have a vote on the board, but I think what needs to happen moving forward is that this resolution be pulled back up. And in terms of be it resolved, that section needs to be rewritten and brought back to us.
And I think that was the discussion at spring conference.
That's the discussion I was asking for today. I would like to see Club 20 and have a resolution that embraces the office if possible, come up with the language that makes it work. And I think the commissioner did point out it is an economic driver, and working directly with that office, they do a lot of economic development work that is specific on growing businesses and promoting various parts of Colorado. I can tell you Monmouth County in the last year was got a tremendous boost by this office that helped us tremendously with the program that was put on for GPS.
Just really briefly, I agree with what's being said. I'm glad the conversation has come back. I would do things such as move that second bullet point up to make it the first bullet point and make it clear that we want to see it remain in the Office of Economic Development as a priority. I think that we really need to be more specific about outdoor recreation industry. Well, look, in the outdoor recreation industry, it's about producers of products and as an employer of people, that this is separate from recreational amenities and locations and communities. It is about people who are innovators and job creators by producing products that are sold across the country, whether it's via internet or other retail locations. And really kind of emphasize that this again is about creating new jobs in a new sector that is taking off nationwide, as opposed to the confusion I think that can occur that this is about how well we manage our parks and boat ramps. You know, this is not what this is about. And that might really help with any discussion that Kathleen has brought up related to the legislation next session and where should it be housed. I would imagine that Parks and Recreation is already focusing on outdoor recreation, as they should. And this is about industry. And that's what's getting a little confused in messaging here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
I don't know if it's something we could recommend that the tourism committee continue to refine this proposal and still present it to us as a new proposal at the fall meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan, did you?
Sure, I think it is worth talking about the bridge between the two, though. There's managing outdoor recreation itself, and then there's the business of outdoor recreation. And just as a background piece, I've worked in the outdoor industry for a long time. One of the things that people have to really accept is that it's very hard to say, we want the business, but we don't want the activities. And one of the reasons Colorado has been a constant growing presence for the outdoor industry is policy on public lands. Most people in the outdoor industry, I see them, almost all people in the outdoor industry, do not want to see the sale of public lands. They want to see recreation have equal footing with agriculture, with extraction, with timber, that public lands have to support all of these things, including outdoor recreation, not one above the other, but equal footing. And we all, I think, on the whole, believe in the multiple use principle. The other thing that the outdoor industry really wants to see is the fact that its economic power is recognized. When you look at the outdoor recreation, the federal government's doing this, they're looking at it as how much contributes to the national economy. It's up there with pharmaceuticals and oil and gas. It is significant. And so I think it is important, though, we're talking about the business end, understanding that the outdoor recreation industry is doing well here because the policies of this state on the whole align with where the industry is and what they want to see. And there was no clearer indication of that than the removal of the Outdoor Retailer Trade Show, which is the largest trade show for the outdoor industry, left Utah. And it left Utah because of Utah's stance on selling public lands and on not really following through on issues that supported the outdoor industry. And when companies like La Sportiva and Black Diamond and Patagonia and the North Face, and these are, you look at these companies, they have the ability to shape and move how the outdoor industry looks and which direction it goes. They've anchored in Colorado because of a lot of the policy reasons. So I think it's important that we focus on, this is about the business of the outdoor industry, but understand that there is a connection between that and policies and what people want to see from a state. And so the states where outdoor industry has really grown have very supportive public lands policies. They have very supportive policies around recognizing that outdoor recreation is and should be on par as in the significant use on public lands. And I will say I chaired Colorado's Public Land Steering Committee for Colorado Counties Incorporated for CCI. And we actually got NACO to switch, and that's the National Association of Counties, to switch their platform and switch it to include outdoor industry along with grazing, forestry, extraction, that it should have equal footing. And the National Association of Counties moved in that direction as well. So I think it's just worth saying that we're discussing this, those two things go together.
If I can respond briefly, I think making an excellent point, and there should be a bullet point that really delineates those two things, that this is about industry and we need the appropriate places that why the policy of public land make a difference. I also would suggest considering you being on the committee with Tom to help finish this out, but also perhaps policy, if you not have one already, for our public land steering committee that are in our meeting weeks from now.
And I would, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that, Kathleen Curry. So I think the resolution, the three, therefore be it resolved bullets are pretty good, because next year when there is another debate about where river recreation and trails, should be, whether or not CPW, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, has a bigger role there. This gives good direction for Brittany next year to be able to refer to these bullets and say, okay, when that comes up again, I know where people stand. But I was gonna point out that, and Rachel and Commissioner Howard raised some great points. On the Parks and Wildlife side, they're trying to talk about recreation in the context of the resource, the wildlife resource, and parks. So they obviously have a role, but it's a little different than the business piece that's been raised. So this is not to say that they don't have any right to have the conversations, but they're looking at it through a different lens. Andrea, please.
So I have the historical notes for you from spring of 2025. After 45 minutes of discussion on the amendments, Callie Scritchfield made a new motion to delete, and Jeff Comstock seconded that, with the emphasis that this is important and it just needs more updating to reflect more accurately. This came about from the creation of the office under Governor Hickenlooper and is not reflective of everything that the office encompasses now. So that's our notes from the board.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Michael?
No.
Andrew?
I think Brittany was gonna chime in online.
Sorry, Brittany, please.
No, I was just gonna say if anybody has any more questions or anything on it, happy to dive deeper into it, but I think that's a pretty fair reflection of what had happened at the spring meeting.
We appreciate those notes. Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I can't remember it. So,
Sure what
that
had for
shows my
dinner
age.
last night.
Yeah, but Kathleen brings up a huge point, which is why we need to continue this resolution through this scenario. I mean, one of the things that I don't believe the Western Slope would like is CPW running or overseeing the business aspect of outdoor rec. I mean, that's kind of like Hatfields and McCoys, honestly. But take it back to your committee. Let's bring it back up. Let's add some of the notes that these ladies brought forth from the last meeting. And let's bring out a lot of what Jonathan, Commissioner Hope brought up. I'm sorry, Jonathan. About how it impacts some of our local companies. And if we need to list Prios or some of these others, then let's do that. Thanks for bringing it back up, and I think we've now got direction on what we need to do.
Great, we have a comment online, I believe it's
Yeah, Jeff
Jeff
Comstock.
Comstock, and then Jeff, and hold on, Jeff, let's go to Jeff Comstock, and then we'll come back to Jeff in the room.
Yep, I very much appreciated the discussion that's just happened, and one of the things I would suggest that would help improve this resolution is to not only highlight the economic and the business side, which is crazy important, but also this issue that CPW has been out there talking about how there are places that the outdoor recreation industry has hurt wildlife, and I think we need to, as Club 20, rise above and acknowledge that we want that responsible management, whether it's identifying carrying capacities for land on recreation or what, but there is a point where recreation overwhelms the landscape from vegetation and wildlife standpoint, and we need to promote that responsible use of recreation as part of the improvements in this resolution.
Rachel, hold on, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff Moore. I have more of a question, which is, in addition to the wildlife that the industry may be hurting, and I love the outdoor recreation industry, but does it put us in conflict with cattlemen and ranchers that are leasing land And, how does that affect us? It seems like there must be some conflict there. Maybe, I don't know, I mean, I'm ignorant, there isn't.
I think we have to ask the ag committee.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Rachel?
Yeah, I do think we'd have to ask the ag community that, be happy to try to incorporate any of their thoughts in it. But, I just wanted to kind of go and support what Jeff Comstock is saying here. In our community, we've had a 2% lodging tax for a long time. And we got to a point where people were really feeling an over tourism, that the experience of the guests wasn't worth it as much. There weren't enough people to serve them in restaurants, all sorts of, add-on issues. And so the chamber changed their focus from bringing more people in, which they still do a little, but to focus on what they call destination management. And, and so they're doing a lot of ads, kind of trying to be friendly, how to Aspen, how to be in the backcountry, how to pack out what you bring in, and you get to a point where destination management is as important as for the chambers as it is to bring more people in. And I think that that's kind of, again, about not overusing. We're starting to see permits to visit Hanging Lake. We're seeing permits to potentially go to our Conundrum Hot Springs. And Hot Springs, we're getting to a point where it's a beautiful location to hike into, but when you have 100 campers around the hot spring, are you suddenly talking about a lot of E. coli in the water? And are people using the facilities correctly? So we are getting to a point, and other places will over time, where over tourism diminishes the experience for everyone who's paying to come here.
Okay, and that's Shauna. We're gonna wrap this discussion up and we really appreciate it.
Pretty soon I'm gonna end up with all of the microphones by the end of this.
You can
So just listening to everyone's little tidbits and stuff on there, I know is gonna go back to committee to be reworked and then reintroduced. I think one of the other whereas should be where there is a need for a regulatory office that is for the management of outdoor recreation industry. Is that correct? For responsible, I don't know, to invest and develop in responsible outdoor recreation industry. Because I think that pretty kind of sums up with like the last 3 comments on that. But just for consideration when you guys go to committee.
Shape it. Okay. We're gonna wrap up.
All right, I think, Jeff, I want to get back to your question, because I think it's a really important one. I think it's one that Club 20 at some point should really grapple with, because it's important about what are the impacts. There is no use on public lands that doesn't have some conflict with other uses. The real discussion is about mitigating those impacts and not picking winners and losers. You'll find plenty of recreationalists that tell you they don't want public land and grazing. You're gonna find plenty of ranchers that say recreation impacts, their operations. You'll have wildlife advocates that'll say a mountain bike trail is terrible for elk habitat, but they have no problem with plowing in roads for a timber sale or oil and gas development. The balance is what this is about, and these are about public land uses, and I think I would caution us as an organization to think about our goal is not to pick winners and losers. Our goal is to advocate for a balanced approach to all these activities. It can be beneficial to our communities, beneficial to our job bases, beneficial to historic uses. And I'll give you one snapshot. Right here behind this campus, the BLM allowed an expansion of 20 miles of non-motorized bike trails. Trails exist in that area before, and there was a lot of conflict between big game habitat. There was conflicts with grazing and recreational use in Gunnison sage grouse, a threatened species. When they issued the new plan, it closed off all recreation uses, which used to have no closures, for 4 months. The producer that has pass-through grazing on that BLM allotment up under the forest actually to get out on that land before the recreational impacts are more substantial. The wildlife corridor is protected when the big game's moving between the Gunnison Basin and the northern end of the San Luis Valley. So when you actually looked at the durable solution that came up at the end, recreational, sure, they got some more trails, but they lost a third of the year that they can actually be out there on them. Big game advocates got more protections for big game coming through by working with the recreationalists. The ranchers were able to have all of their fencing and the things that they needed to maintain in place. All of the gates that were either being left closed or open when they shouldn't be were all had to be replaced with spring-loaded gates and rollovers so that the rancher didn't have to go out every single day and think that a biker or hiker would leave a gate open. And I think when we start talking about what management looks like and what recreation looks like, those are the kind of solutions that we need to be pursuing organizationally. Because if we try to pick one specific group to be a winner or loser, our communities end up being the losers. We need ag in our communities. We need extraction and forestry in our communities. We need recreation in our communities. And so your question, I think, is one that we tend to sometimes just get a little like, I don't know if I can talk about that. I actually think that's a place where we can really attack the issue without attacking each other. And we can have some policies and some policy statements that reflect that we understand that dynamic tension between those activities. And we are actually more than willing to do the hard work to find durable solutions that can be beneficiary to all these different industries and economic drivers.
Okay, okay, Tom? Anything else? Thank you all so much for that discussion. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Kathleen, for bringing forward coming from the house. That is it for us, but let's do some wrap up and housekeeping notes and we'll send you on your way.
Hey, we made it through the first week of summer policy meetings. Thank you again to everybody. I have several thank yous, so hold your applauses till the end. Thank you to Gunnison County for making us feel so welcome here. Thank you to Western Colorado University for this beautiful space. I'd love to have every meeting here, actually, but and thank you to all of you that attended, the folks online. All of the input matters, and it's what we all need to make our voices heard. And then lastly, thank you to Chevron, Rocky Mountain Health Plans, and CHAFA for sponsoring this great event. And now please give everyone a round of applause. And I must say thank you to Cameron. We went from a 3-person team this week to a 2-person team, and she really came forward for us. So thank you, Cameron.
And I was just gonna chime in and say, let's give a big round of applause to,
Go ahead. Sorry, Brittany, I didn't.
no, that's okay. I just wanted to chime in right before you were saying that was, let's give a big round of applause to both Andrea and Cameron and to Michael and to all of you guys, because I am so grateful that they were able to take hold of everything and make sure that the meeting still went smoothly and flawlessly so I could heal up. So thank you to them, and let's give them a round of applause.
Hey, lastly, just 2 quick things. One, spring or Steak Fry and Fall Conference set for September 5th and 6th. Registration is open on our website. So please register as soon as you can so we can have another event. And then lastly, drive safe. Lunch is served outside. We made it a very light lunch that you can take with you. There are to-go containers. So please be safe going home, and we'll see you in Routt County in a couple weeks.